This is, yeah, Portland.
Hi, Erin.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you? Hello, Ron.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah. Carol, did I see that Giselle is going to be here tonight?
Giselle will be here, and then we had a last minute cancellation, unfortunately, from Shona, who's ill. She's hoping it's not COVID.
But was Giselle planning on joining this meeting because she's missed all the hearings?
Yes, so we'll be asking her if she's watched the YouTube videos.
So you don't know at this point whether she's just attending to be part of the other events or this event.
I mailed her that information on. She can confirm once she gets here and the meeting starts whether or not she's watched.
So we don't know if we have a quorum at the moment.
We should. John Duza will also be here.
Oh, okay. And is he sitting and participating also, or do you not know?
If you could wait until we start the meeting.
Well, I'm sorry, you all know and we don't, but that's fine.
Hi, Giselle.
Hi, wait, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Oh, good. How's
Looks like
everybody?
you have a magnificent crown behind your
Yeah,
head.
you have a crown. The mirror is like your crown.
About
Beautiful.
to come down.
Hi, John.
Oh, Aaron.
Hi, John.
Hi, Carol.
So I think we have everyone.
Yes.
Will the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of September 15th, 2022, please come to order? We have 2 public hearings scheduled for this evening, so I want to take a few minutes to review the process for public hearings. During the public hearing, the applicant will be invited to join as a panelist to present the application, explaining to the commission and others present what is being requested or what's been updated. The applicant or staff will share all application materials on the screen as needed. Comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any, and there will be clarifying questions from the commissioners. Then there will be an opportunity for clarifying questions from attendees. Please raise your hand through the Zoom platform and wait to be called on and unmuted. Next, those who wish to support an application, if it's a new application, may come forward, and then those who oppose the application may come forward. As this public hearing must be recorded, it is necessary for speakers to identify themselves each time they speak by stating their name and address. The applicant will then have an opportunity to address any questions or concerns raised by the public or commissioners. Once the public hearing is closed, the applicant is free to leave or remain for the balance of the regular meeting, during which the commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of this commission and has a right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. Decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Land Use Department at 203-245-5631 after 9 a.m. All actions taken tonight by the commission will be by roll call. All commissioners and staff will identify themselves for the record before speaking. Seated this evening are members Ron Bodenson, Giselle McDowell, and myself, Carol Snow. And in Commissioner Elliott Hitchcock's absence, I'm seating alternate John Dusa. John, is that okay with you?
Yes, thanks.
And could you confirm that you watched the August 18th meeting on YouTube for us?
Yes, I watched it full on YouTube.
Great, thank you. And Giselle, will you please confirm too that you have watched the August 18th and September 1st meetings on the YouTube video?
Yes. Both were watched.
Great, thank you. Staff present this evening is Erin Mannix, Town Planner. Also present is our Land Use Attorney, Pete Gelderman. Welcome, Pete Gelderman. Thank you for attending. This meeting is live streamed on YouTube and will be made available on the town website for viewing. The Town Planner will now read the legal notice. Erin, over to you.
Thank you, Carol. Notice is hereby given that the commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, September 15th, 2022 at 7 p.m. via Zoom online webinar. Attendees may join the webinar through either the webinar link or call-in information below. The webinar ID is 915-8196-6735. Passcode is 452138. The following application will be heard. 22-19 New Road, map 60, lot 18, zone RU2. Owner applicant is 155 New Road, Madison, LLC. Petition for zone boundary change, Land Development District per section 32 to construct 29,980 square foot medical office building with associated site improvements. Further details on how to participate in the webinar are posted on the Town of Madison website, www.madisonct.org. Copies of these applications are available for inspection in the Land Use Office. All written correspondence can be submitted to the Land Use Department via email at landuse@madisonct.org. Dial 203-245-5631 for assistance. Dated in Madison, Connecticut, this 23rd day of August, 2022. Carol Snow, Chair. This ran once in the source on September 1st, 2022, and once on September 8th, 2022.
Thank you, Erin. The first agenda item we have tonight is 22-18, 35 Cottage Road, which is a continuation of a public hearing. Could I have a motion to continue the public hearing for 22-18, 35 Cottage Road?
Carol, can I raise something first? Our counsel is here. So I just want to make sure that he believes that the statements made by the two members who didn't attend the other hearings are sufficient for them to sit in on this hearing, or whether anything else needs to be said or done.
No, that is sufficient.
Okay, because the books that because the handbooks that have been handed out to us on legal things make two more requirements under the case law, and they haven't been mentioned. So, but if you say that's sufficient, I accept it. I don't want this to be an issue on appeal someday.
It won't be, it's sufficient.
Okay.
Okay, so could I have a motion to continue the public hearing? Giselle? John? So moved. Any further discussion? Second? And a vote. All in favor. We'll continue. Yes. Okay.
Aye.
Off to a rolling start here. I think the applicant may have new information and updates for us, so we would entertain those first.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the commission. I'm Attorney Marjorie Shansky. I represent 35 Cottage LLC. And I'm here this evening with, although I don't see Michael Ott,
And
Aaron is looking for him now. Our
excuse me, Mark, I'm trying to promote Summerhill Engineers, but it's not, he needs to accept that. So maybe he's having a
okay.
minor technical.
We're also getting some background noise. I don't know if anyone has.
It's, yeah, very conflicting.
There's nothing here.
It might be Giselle. Thank you, Giselle, for muting, but don't forget to unmute when you need to.
So Michael Ott, Summerhill Civil Engineering and Landscaping and Land Surveying is here, our site engineer, and Carl Giordano from SLR Consulting, professional engineer in traffic. Joseph Versteeg, our fire safety code, fire prevention code, and state building code expert, and Abigail Adams, our landscape architect, is here, and John Matthews, our architect, I see is here as well. Madam Chair, I did provide a letter to the commission. There really weren't that many questions from last time, and they were primarily contained in the record, and so the answers simply direct the commission to exhibits that are already in the record. There is a reserve leaching field to the question about where the next leaching field will be built. That is shown on sheet C2.3. There is a response to the traffic study question. Abigail Adams provided the information about tree removal and tree planting, which is on page 2 of the letter. And then I also recapped her narrative on the scope of the very robust landscaping that's going to occur in this development. Michael Ott wrote that 1,500 cubic yards of fill are associated with the proposed development, a question that had been asked. And finally, we had an arborist look at the beech tree. That had been a concern, though we do have a tree protection plan shown on sheet C2.1, and a tree protection detail is on sheet C3.8. The arborist, Charles Iselin Jr., found the tree to be in fairly good health, though he did note that it appears to have beech leaf disease, which is a relatively new problem for beech trees in Connecticut, and for which at this time, he says, there is no known effective treatment. He indicated that a lot of research is being conducted, but that if an effective treatment is not discovered soon, this tree and other similarly affected beech trees may be lost. He recommended for the construction phase some additional fencing along Cottage and Mill roads and a fence at the site interior to protect the area from any intrusion during construction or any material storage. And the developer agrees to those additional protections. So I believe we have comprehensively addressed the interest and issue of the beech tree. Then we did receive a late email today from the fire marshal inquiring about whether the largest ladder truck had been considered in the design and access study. And of course, Mr. Giordano, Mr. Ott, and Mr. Versteeg are all here if the commission wants to hear from them. That was the direct testimony during the earlier part of the hearing. Mr. Ott, in fact, obtained the turning radius of the ladder truck from the fire marshal and handed it over to Mr. Giordano and shared all that information with Mr. Versteeg as well. So that has long since been established. Then there was a subsequent concern that if the volunteer fire truck is coming up Mill Road, that its inclination to get to the Cottage Road address would be to turn left and confront one of the limited turning radiuses. We have offered to change the address to Mill Road. If it's a critical linkage between the address and the ability to turn in, that is not a problem. We could also erect signage that says 35 Cottage Road at the Mill Road entry. This is fixable in one or more of those ways. So I believe while it was exciting to get a question like that at 4:30 on the day of the hearing, we were able to marshal our resources and establish that we had it covered. We had long since had it covered. I would also note that Mr. Versteeg's testimony at the time of, I think at the time of his testimony, was that the code is met by access in and egress out, and that the preference of turning direction is not a factor for code compliance. But if for convenience these other issues intervene, again, we're happy to change the address and we're happy to put up signage, whichever seems to be the most rational and effective. And then, Madam Chair, I have a lot of summary to do, but I think that if the commission has questions, or if there's somebody who has not yet participated in the hearing who has a question, we'd be interested in hearing from you or them.
Thank you, Attorney Shansky. Do any commissioners have any questions?
I will, but I defer to John and Giselle, who haven't been there before.
Carol, I have a question. I'm not
Yes,
sure who
sure.
it's directed to. My question is about the correspondence that we received late this evening about the Department of Public Health approving and then maybe not approving the septic system plans.
Yes, I'll be happy to. And again, there are others here who can, but this is really a chronology, so I think I'm suitable to have this conversation with you, at least at the outset.
Excuse me for just a moment, Marjorie. Is anyone else having trouble hearing Attorney Shansky, or is it just on my end with speakers? You just seem really low, and I keep getting closer to the camera.
Well,
Everybody else fine?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'm having that problem too. It like goes in and out.
Okay,
Well, is this better? Because I've just turned the original sound off. Is this better?
I can hear you. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Marjorie.
And I've turned the volume all the way up and I'm sitting closer to my computer. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So the septic system was originally approved back in December, I think, by December 22nd by the State Department of Public Health. In fact, at the time, they were quite complimentary on the degree of finish in those plans. And on August 18th, the health director in Madison also approved the plans. On August 29th, the neighbor to the, I'm going to say north, I hope that's the right direction, 42 Mill Road, brought a photograph to the health director, and as counsel, I'm duty bound to say purporting to be the picture of the pump at his property. There's no way to identify that to the site other than the fact that it's in his letter. So that's where that qualification comes from. And indicated that the pump had the capacity to pump at greater than 10 gallons per minute. The standard under the Public Health Code and under the technical standards, and Mr. Ott might be able to describe this with more specificity, but for the residential uses, it's a pump of 10 gallons or less per minute, and that generates the 75-foot separation distance between pumps and septic systems. Now, so because the neighbor brought this photograph to the health director of a pump that purports to pump at greater than 10 gallons per minute, the health director, this is the sort of troubling part, summarily added a condition of approval to the 35 Cottage Road approval, requiring that our septic system be 150 feet away from Mr. Fedorovich's well. So now this is Arcania, and I apologize. There's only like a 3-day appeal period under the Public Health Code. So we filed an appeal of the health director's condition, and subsequently the State Department of Public Health, based only on the action of the health director, rescinded its approval, but not without requesting from the applicant additional information, leaving open the possibility of that conversation. Mr. Ott prepared a 5-page detailed letter with exhibits, a copy of which has been provided for your information, not because we're having this argument or discussion with you. It's in front of the Department of Public Health. But in those 5 pages, he describes the technical standards, the requirements of the Public Health Code, their application in residential context. And he also described in detail the due diligence that he performed in designing the septic system for 35 Cottage Road. And that due diligence included examining the records for 42 Mill Road. And you may remember early on, the wellhead was covered on 42, and it took till much later in the process for it to be uncovered. We sent out a surveyor to locate the well, and our septic system meets the 75-foot separation from that well. In looking at the records for 42 Mill Road, he discovered that the well and the septic system, I don't remember the sequence, one went in 1973, one went in 1976, but since 1971, the requirements of the Public Health Code have been unwaveringly the same, 75 feet distance with a well at 10 gallons per minute or less. So the point is that the well at 42 Mill Road is 80 feet from the septic system there. It is not 150 feet from the septic system there. And so there is a condition, if based on the records in the town of Madison, which is all we have to go on, obviously, but based on the records of the town of Madison, there's a condition next door where the well, if it is indeed pumping at greater than 10 gallons per minute, is too close to that septic system, and that is an occupied property. It is possible to have a governor on that well pump that reduces it to 10 gallons or less, in which case the 80-foot away septic system would be legitimized, as would the design for our septic system at 75 feet. This is all sitting now at the Department of Public Health and will be resolved in as quickly as possible. I don't know what your experience is with the state offices after COVID. They are still not coming to work every day. It's not a fluid conversation that goes on without interruption, but we are absolutely and obviously committed to getting resolution on this. I will also say that it is only the separation distance that's an issue. The design of the septic system itself, its components, their depth, all of the different aspects of that design are not an issue. Those were approved and remain steadfastly so. The issue is separation. It is an issue, but we think under both Mr. Ott's analysis, which goes deep and long, and his study of existing conditions, that this will be resolved favorably. So, not to jump ahead on that point, but I will, and that is that in the event the commission gets to a place of making a decision, it is entirely appropriate under an 830G application to condition your approval on the reissuance of the approval from the Department of Public Health and the local health director. And that's where we are.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Ott, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No.
Very well. Do you have any other question about it, Mr. Commissioner?
Not on that, but I do have a secondary question for Mr. Ott related to some comments on the August 18th meeting about the flooding and the pond level. And just a brief answer. My question is, he mentioned that in the case of a 100-year flood, using the bathtub method of measuring rise, the pond would only rise 10 inches. So I've been thinking about that, and I'm wondering which variables he put into that, because 10 inches doesn't seem like very much of a rise, especially for all the water that would be flowing into what he is assuming is a bathtub. So just a brief answer to that about how he calculated that would be great, please.
So for the record, I'm Mike Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summerhill Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors, and my office is at 60 Wall Street in Madison. I think what I said that evening was that I believe I was trying to explain that the topography of the site is such that the lowest elevation along the property boundaries is approximately elevation 11. And the typical high water level of the pond is elevation 5. So 6 feet below the lowest elevation at the property boundaries. And the reason I went into the discussion about the rise in the pond surface was based on comments from the public. And what I believe what I said was, it's much more complicated than the simple analysis that I described. But conservatively, if you considered that the pond was sealed, or that it was a bathtub, and that as surface water runoff during a rainfall event entered the pond, that no water was going out into the groundwater table through the bottom or the sides of the pond, hence the bathtub analogy. That if you look at, and I think this is going to get to the crux and answer your question, if you look at the drainage area to the pond, which is the land area that contributes surface water runoff to the pond, if you look at that area in square feet or in acres, and you look at the rainfall depth from a 100-year event, it's a pretty simple calculation, the area times the depth. And the pond could only raise 10 inches. The point of that whole discussion was to assure everyone that, unlike the comments that had been made, the pond actually not overflow outside of the project site parcel, and the next door parcel. Part of the pond is actually on the next door parcel, without rising 5 feet or more. I'm sorry, 6 feet or more. So that was the point of that whole discussion. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, well, I think so. So I understand the margin for rise is significant. So it's, in your opinion, not that much of a risk, but I'm still stuck on the 10 inches. I'm thinking if, say, 10 inches of rain fell, wouldn't the pond just rise 10 inches on its own without any runoff coming in? And therefore, couldn't it be more?
You have to look at the drainage area that's contributing, the land area that's contributing surface water runoff to the pond. So when it rains, it's not just the rain that falls straight down onto the pond surface. It's the rain that falls on the land also that drains to the pond.
Well, I understand. So my question then is, how much rainfall are you assuming in that 100-year event? Approximately.
I would have to look it up. I don't remember what the rainfall depth is. I believe it's 7-ish or almost 8 inches, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's in a 24-hour period.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commission? I have none.
Yes,
One last question for Attorney Shansky.
Okay.
Related to the beech tree. I saw the comments from the arborist. And my question is, did he provide any other assessment of the risks to that tree after the construction, or if the construction is done?
No,
Okay.
I think that what has been provided, and with the commentary that we've heard, the the tree will be permitted to be unmolested and do its best to thrive.
Okay.
Ron Bodenston, I think you have a question.
Right, so for Engineer Odd, I'd like to flesh out a little bit the table 3, which is the catchment area 2 peak discharge summary into Cottage Road. And as I understand it, it's only catchment 2 that you're not doing 3, 4, and 5 because those are too small an areas. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so the 5,400 square feet of drainage into those 4 catchments, how much is going into catchment 2 then? The large majority?
Yes, I'd have to, if you give me a second, I can open the stormwater management report, but
I couldn't see it there. I didn't see how you, it's not a big deal, but I'd have to assume the large majority is in catchment 2 because you're ignoring 3, 4, and 5 is too small.
yeah, could I share my screen and I can show you just based on the site plan? I can
Sure,
show you,
okay.
if that's okay. So can the commission see my screen now?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can, thanks.
Okay. So let me just scroll to the general plan, which shows the overall site development. Oops, sorry about that. It's not what I wanted. Okay, so the area that drains to the pond, I'm gonna roughly trace it. Actually, let me, yeah. So the area of the site that drains to the pond, I'll trace with my cursor if you can see it, and you'll see automatically that it's the major area of the site.
Right. We understand that.
Well, I just need to get this on the record, the question. So that's that area that I just traced, obviously the major portion of the site is what goes to the pond.
Right.
This little triangular area here, a little piece up here, I think, and a little bit here, they all go out to either Cottage or Mill Road.
Okay. But your table only deals with catchment 2. And I was asking how much of catchment 2 is the 5,410 square feet that you use for catchments to send to Cottage Road?
Can you repeat that? You lost.
Okay, so you give us table 3, which is catchment area 2 peak discharge summary. But then you say we're ignoring catchment 3, 4, and 5 because they're such small areas.
Right, for the purpose of analysis, correct.
All right.
Yep.
But the area, you do give a square footage of the total catchment area of 5,410 square feet. And my only question was, since you're concentrated in area 2, I guess that has the lion's share of that 5,410 square feet.
No, sir, that's not correct.
Okay.
No, I think you're missing. Let me open the stormwater management report if I could.
Well, it says hydrologic models for catchment areas 3, 4, and 5 were not developed given their small areas. Are there areas bigger than catchment 2 which was developed? That would seem odd.
No. So the area of catchment 2, as I recall, is about 1/4 of an acre.
Okay.
The area, the 5,400 square feet is the sum of the smaller areas 3, 4, and 5.
I misunderstood that. Okay,
Yeah,
so it's
I
about
thought that's, yeah.
Okay, I didn't catch that. And then, as I understand it, the peak discharge for catchment 2 in a 2-year event is 1/10 of a cubic foot per second. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's not even 1/10 of it's not even 1 cubic feet per second. It's 1/10.
Correct.
Right? How much water is in 1/10 cubic feet per second?
A little, it depends on the duration of the storm. You have to put the time element, time factor into it. But I think you might remember, it actually doesn't matter what the peak discharges are, because all of, with the exception of those small areas that in total equal 5,400 square feet, all of the stormwater runoff stays on the site and goes into the pond ultimately. So
Yeah,
the
I'm only
reason-
interested in the water that goes out to Cottage Road, because you said you are discharging into Cottage Road. And as I understand your table 3, the peak discharge is 1/10 of a cubic foot per second.
yeah, yeah.
It's your table, and that's for a 2-year interval. That must be some rain that only happens every 2 years or something. No,
No,
all right.
no. Not at
Okay,
all.
so if it's only 1/10 of a cubic foot per second, every table I've looked up says that's less than a gallon. Does that sound right to you?
It depends on the time,
Well,
Commissioner.
we have a time. It's a second.
No, you're not interpreting this correctly.
Okay.
The 1/10 of a cubic foot per second is a peak discharge. It's the computed peak discharge rate that happens over the entire time interval of a rainfall event, which is 24 hours.
Are you saying that in 24 hours, only 1/10 of a cubic foot of water goes into Cottage Road?
No, I'm not. This is, I'm not sure this is the right forum to do this, because this would take a lot of explanation. But the peak discharge happens instantaneously. During the rest of the rainfall events, the discharge is lower at any point in time.
Well, I can understand that, but maybe a peak discharge in a 10-hour rain only lasts 1 second. But I don't think that
No,
that comports with our common sense. But
no, that's not what I, just for the record,
Okay.
Let me say 2 things, please.
All right.
For the record, that's not what I said. And second,
Okay, I misunderstood it.
also for the record, I can tell that this conversation is going to get extremely convoluted. So let me explain, if I could, just very briefly.
Well, let me interrupt a second. Maybe you're not understanding what I'm getting at. You're saying that you're discharging stormwater to Cottage Road. You haven't told us how much water that is. You have a formula that seems to be 1/10 of a cubic foot per second. And are you saying you cannot convert that to gallons and no one knows how much water is going out there? Might be 10
No,
gallons, might be 1,000,000 gallons.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
No, absolutely, I am not saying that. I think, let me say this though, if I could, and I said this in the past.
Okay.
And this is my professional opinion as a licensed professional engineer. There is a very small area of land from this site that will direct surface water runoff to Cottage Road and to Mill Road. It's approximately 5,400 square feet in area. Only, as I recall, and I don't have it in front of me, only about 1,400 feet of that 5,400 feet is impervious surface. The remainder of the 5,400 feet is either lawn or planted landscaped areas. That total area, 5,400 square feet, given its 3 different types of ground cover percentage, is so small that to model it would produce inaccurate results. It's much too small. There is no adverse, and I'm saying this for the record, there is no adverse impact, in my professional opinion, from allowing 5,400 square feet of land area where the majority of it is lawn or landscaped area to go out to the Cottage and Mill Road intersections, because the only adverse impact could be that the drainage system inlets can't accept the runoff, or that the storm sewers can't accept the runoff. And at a drainage inlets and storm sewers are designed based on peak discharges. And the peak discharge is too low to be able to impact the municipal roadway storm drainage system. That's the statement I made last time. That's what the report says. And that's what I'm.
Yeah. Well, again, I appreciate your opinion on it, but what you're saying is you don't have a figure for how many hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of gallons will go off your land into Cottage Road. I was thinking this was a formula given, I mean, I ran rivers out west for 40 years. You always are looking at the cubic feet per second. Is it 10,000 cubic feet, 20,000? Depends whether you can run it or not. 1/10 isn't the Colorado River, but it's measurable. And what you're saying is this really isn't measurable under your chart, that if I say 1/10 of a cubic foot per second under every Google chart you can find is less than a gallon, 3/4 of a gallon, you're saying that's irrelevant because nobody knows how much water is going out there.
No, that's.
All right, then tell me how much water is going out there in 5 hours when there's an event of cubic feet per second of 1/10 of a second.
I'm not honestly, Mr. Bodenson, you've said so many things that are that I don't, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's very difficult to answer your question, but let me say this. You can compute the volume of surface water runoff during a specific storm event that will go out to Cottage Road. I can compute that, be glad to compute it. I can't answer it for you right now. But that's really all I can say. The statements you've made are just, and I know this is not what you do, and I'm not trying to be mean, but they just don't make sense.
Okay, so I'm not sure what statement I made other than I ran rivers and paid attention to cubic feet per second. I was just trying to suggest that you have not given us that information. Apparently, we cannot find it in your report. You said you could compute it, but I'm wondering, can another engineer, based upon what you've done, using your peak discharge of 1/10 of cubic foot per second, using a recurrence interval of 2 years, would any other engineer in the country also be able to compute how much water is going out on Cottage Road?
Yes, and it's not, again, it's not based on the peak. It's not based, the volume of water that will go out to Cottage Road during a rainfall event is not related to the rate of peak discharge. It's related to volume of surface water runoff that happens during the time period of the rainfall event.
And have you given us that information?
I would be glad to compute that. Absolutely.
My question is, can any other engineer compute it based upon the report you've submitted?
Absolutely.
Okay, so all the information's there to be done is what you're representing to us.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. And that my simple-minded approach of 1/10 of a cubic foot per second, and then that's a gallon, and 60 seconds later it's 45 gallons, an hour later is 2,600 gallons, doesn't work. You need an engineer to figure it out.
You don't need an engineer, but unfortunately, Mr. Bobenson, don't take this the wrong way. You would fail a hydrology one.
I'm sure I would, and I
does
just
not,
simply
and it doesn't work.
misunderstood that where I come from, cubic feet per second in discharge is calculable once you know the cubic feet per second, but apparently it isn't in this situation. So, okay, it's an unknown quantity at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think if there are no further questions, should we open it up then to public response to new information? I ask that we don't rehash topics and issues that have already been covered in our previous two meetings, if at all possible. I think we've answered a lot of those and resolved a lot of those. So if we could open it up to the public, Erin, that'd be great.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have one individual with their hand raised, Rasim Feratovic. Want to speak again. Mr. Feratovic?
Yes, you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My question by the engineer.
Excuse me, Mr.
So-
Feratovic, could you please identify yourself with your address for the record?
I am 42 Mill Road. I could do a question to the engineer because I see in him it's how say I not say him it's that smart too much, and I know wanted to deal with people who have to understand it's 18 units. It can engineer say to me how many water go to from that building out 24 hours. Where is that water go? That it's water, usable water by the human is different of that raining and God give it to us. That the extra, no? But I wanted to know where it's going, that water from the building. You have to commission that now for you. You have to know in that pound already is destroyed between me and them. Already start to be smell. But how figure out can not being smell all the entire that area there. I worry about me, I worry about my neighbors. Because of after, I'm sorry, somebody called me. After that, I have to sell my property. I know can sell because nobody know can buy the property very, very terrible smell coming. Engineer, you know very well that, and I apologize, but I want to say to the engineer, not do it that project there because of it's not space to do. It's a lot people coming there and have to, you know, every apartment will have 2 or 3 peoples. Divide how many water to be spent at one apartment. And how many times my engineer go in the bathroom during the night? I am sitting at the age 60, and I go twice. I'm sorry, because I have to talking like that normal small people.
I think this question has been asked before, but Mr. Ott, if you could maybe answer it concisely for us again.
I will try. I think the question is how much water, assuming that means volume, will be discharged from the building in a day? Is that basically the question?
Or a
Yes.
possible source of smell?
So to the question of how much water will be discharged from the building in a day, The septic system is designed, and these design computations are part of the drawing set. The septic system is designed for a wastewater, an assumed wastewater design flow of 2,700 gallons per day. And that number it's prescribed by the Connecticut Public Health Code. That's where that number comes from. It's simply based on the number of bedrooms in the building that the septic system will serve. I can't answer a question about smell. The septic system has been designed in accordance with the requirements of the state of Connecticut Public Health Code. And it is intended to be constructed in accordance with those same requirements and maintained by the property owner, just like any other septic system for any other building in any town in the state of Connecticut.
Thank you. I see 2 more hands up.
Yes, Madam Chair. Liz Amendola. Liz, if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Liz Amendola, 67 River Road. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I had two questions actually last meeting. One regarding the tree that I don't think was addressed tonight. And within my research it's a European weeping beech tree, one of only 2 known to be in Madison, by the way. One thing that root system will absolutely not tolerate is what's called street salt. And I asked last week, how would the parking lot be maintained without using salt in the wintertime for the safety of the residents there? And how is it going to be, if salt obviously will be used, how would you prevent that from going into that? And maybe that's that 5,000 square foot area you were talking about. How are you going to stop it from running into that area?
Is this a question for Abigail Adams? I see she's here tonight. No, okay.
It's
Okay.
if I could, Madam Chairman.
Yes, thanks.
Our stormwater management plan and the site operation and maintenance plan specifically says that sodium-based de-icing materials will not be used on this site. So that's pretty clear, I think.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have Brianna O'Neill.
Okay, thanks.
Brianna, if you can unmute yourself and identify yourself for the record, excuse me.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brianna O'Neill at 49 Cottage Road, and I am questioning if the sewage system, if it complies or if it does not comply with the Connecticut Public Health Code due to the setback distance.
That has been asked and answered. This is Attorney Shansky. There is a dispute as to the separating distance. It is under appeal at the Department of Public Health. The septic system has been designed in accordance with the requirements of the Connecticut Public Health Code.
Madam Chair, you have additional comments from both Racine Feratovic and Liz Amendola and Deb King.
Okay, once again, I'm going to emphasize that we're entertaining questions about new information tonight. We don't want to go back to what we've covered in the September 1st or August 18th meetings.
I'll have
So,
Deb
Mr.
King.
Paratovic, if we want to
Okay.
address a new question.
You hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay, same thing for the engineer. Him last time he said that my well pumped water pushing like 2-3 gallons per minute, and him I spent almost $2,000 to push out my well water. I paid the people who work that, and my well water pushing 24 gallons per minute. In this case, I inform myself, and that septic have to be 150 feet from my well water in my house, and it's in him maybe by from I don't know, other cross the street to make it that big septic. That is different things, but in this case him no have to make it that septic close to my property. Is the Connecticut law, it's 150 feet from my well water.
Okay, we've just been told that this is something that's being appealed, and I think we need to wait for that information.
Liz Amendola?
Yes, I'm sorry, I got cut out, I guess, before I asked my second question. I had asked it at the prior meeting. What is in plowing snow in the parking area, where would the snow be pushed? Would it be pushed out onto Cottage Road, out onto Mill Road? It's a very narrow, of course, we all know this, a very narrow area, especially on Cottage. Snow gets piled up very high there on each side, impossible really for 2 cars to pass each other there when there's sometimes in a bad winter, 5, 6, 7 feet of snow piled up high. What is the plowing plan there for the parking area?
I can answer that, I believe. So it's not moving snow from a private site into a town road right of way is just not allowed. That's true in every municipality. The owner of the site is responsible for its operations, including snow and ice control. So depending on the depth of the snowstorm and previous storms and the weather, and whether it's rained or not in the wintertime, or whether it's very sunny or not, all those factors come into play as to whether snow is simply stored in lawn areas on the site, or it's loaded into trucks and hauled off site and disposed of properly. But it's not allowed and not allowable to be pushed out into the town road right of way.
Deb King?
Hi, Deb King, 49 Cottage Road. Did you determine where the existing septic system is?
Is that a question for me, Madam Chairman?
I don't know, Deb King.
It was one of the questions I asked. You responded on the fill that there's 1,500 cubic feet of fill being brought in. I looked that up, and does that, I saw somewhere that it said 1,600 cubic feet is about the size of a 2-car garage. Maybe you could confirm that for me, because I'm not an engineer. But yes, I have concerns about where the fill is going to be placed when you remove the existing septic system.
The removal, first of all, there's more than one septic system on the property. The removal of the existing septic systems is not in any way associated with the placement of fill on the site. Does that answer your question?
I had Deb King ask her question and removed her permission to speak. Does that answer your question?
No, because on your permit drawings, it says that you're going to remove the existing septic system and dispose it off-site, and the resultant voids will be filled with granular fill.
That's correct. That's all below the ground surface. The entire septic system is below the surface of the ground today. If we went out tomorrow and removed the septic system, there would be voids below the existing ground surface, and those would be backfilled, just as our drawings say, with material, and the ground surface would be reestablished. There's no raising of the ground surface associated with the removal of septic systems.
So is that septic system where I mentioned, like near the flooding on Cottage Road at the last meeting? Because that question wasn't answered.
I don't remember a question about that, but there's records of showing one of the septic systems between one of the buildings and the in Cottage Road. Yes.
Okay, so my concern relates to the fact that this is in a flood zone and you can't raise the level. And I know you've said this, you can't bring in any fill that would result in any increase in the flood levels. It's prohibited. And back to Mr. Bodenson's question, the calculations you used for this site for the stormwater were NOAA numbers for a 25-year rainfall, and it's 6.45 inches in 24 hours. We went through this at IWA, and already September 2nd of last year, we had 5.55 inches within 24 hours, which was greater than the 10-year expectation and only less than an inch short of the 25-year benchmark. So with increased flooding, I think we're all concerned that that water is going to go out to Cottage Road.
Ms. King, I'm going to apologize before I answer your questions, but I'm just going to have to say, for the record, what you have stated about the inability to place fill and raise the water surface elevation is not correct. You are quoting, you must have looked at floodplain management regulations for areas that are subject to riverine flooding and are not tidal. In this, as stated, this is actually language in our stormwater management report. In areas that are tidally influenced, there is no requirement to not increase the water surface elevation. The flooding source, as stated in our report, is the waters of Long Island Sound. This is accepted engineering practice when it comes to floodplain management. The town's current floodplain management ordinance says exactly what I'm saying. I believe the words in the language are, with the exception of areas that are tidally influenced. The flooding source, the flood waters, are the waters of Long Island Sound. So the statement you made is unfortunately incorrect. Your concern about the rainfall event that we had recently and increases in rainfall depths is a concern of everyone. However, there are standards of practice that are followed in the design of stormwater management facilities, and one part of those standards are the use of prescribed rainfall depths and timing of rainfall events, and that is what has been used here. What we have done here are the same standards that are used for the design of stormwater management facilities for any other project. The flooding, we might as well talk about this now. The ponding on Cottage Road, we talked, I believe we went through this once before, but I just want to make sure we get this on the record. There is surface ponding of water at the intersection of Cottage Road and Mill Road. We identified it months ago. We took photographs of it. We had a meeting with town staff. We showed them the ponding problem. I explained in some detail, I think, at a previous meeting, I'll be glad to do it again, why that occurs. So it's an existing condition. The water ponds at the intersection, and over time it goes away. That kind of ponding at the intersection is not the same as flooding from Long Island Sound. It's two completely different things. Very different things. Not sure this is helping, but what I've explained, I think is fact. And I'd be glad to try to explain it in more detail if you'd like.
Madam Chair, would you?
I think we can take the next question.
Eileen O. You could identify yourself, please.
Yes, good evening. Eileen O'Neill, 49 Cottage Road. So I actually would like to dispute the fact that that pond is not tidally influenced. And at the last meeting, we had asked if the commissioners had gone on a property walk. And I believe the response was no. If you do go on the property, you will see the Hammonasset River stream coming directly to that pond. It has been dammed for mosquito purposes all along the back of 49 Cottage Road's property. And I really do think that the commissioners should go down there and look at it. I do have photos of it. It's wet and it is influenced by the Hammonasset River. So in addition to that, another thing that I also dispute is the density, the number of units on this property. Next door, Mr. Gentile has 9 units. So this is twice the size. The property is not twice the size with the pond on it. Also with the sewage issues, there's a lot going on there. So I believe that the property should be cut, the number of units should be cut in half at a minimum. He has 2 buildings over there. He could replicate similarly to what he's already doing on the other property. I also would like to, for the record, I would also like to request that a pervious parking area be installed. That will help with some of these storm water issues. I'd also like to request for the record that low lights are installed on the building as well, so that there is no night sky interference. And also I would like to request that Mr. Gentile fulfill his promise to the 249 Cottage Road property owners when he put in his other project, that he would do shrubbery and he would do landscaping along our property line, which he failed to do. And in our last go around with this, he hired a landscape architect only for the meeting purposes and to present plans, but he did not hire that person to do any landscaping. So I think we'd like him to fulfill his promise to do our shrub line.
I'd like to stop you there, because what's happened in the past has no relevance really to this application. I think we're focused on the current application, and I'm asking for new questions, new information. So if we could try to remember that.
That is my last request, Commissioner, but it just shows some of the character of what it would make for a good neighbor. So,
all right, I think we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Betsy Meehan, you can identify yourself, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is Betsy Meehan. I'm at 6 Todd's Mill Circle, which is adjacent to 42 Mill Road. And I guess one question I have for starters is, I haven't been able to make the last 2 meetings. So I know that you don't want questions that were addressed in the last 2 meetings, but how would I get like a transcript of the last 2 meetings? That's my first question. My second question is, am I correct in knowing that this project is under appeal at this time because of the septic system being not 150 feet away, or the leaching fields not being 150 feet away from my neighbor's water well?
Can answer your question as far as transcripts. The YouTube recordings of the August 18th and September 1st Planning and Zoning Commission meetings, which were the first meetings of the public hearing, are available through the town's website, as well as the minutes from both of those meetings are also available online.
So I would go to the, can you hear me?
Yes.
I am not technically savvy, so I apologize. So if I went to the Madison website, I would go there, not to YouTube. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, there's a link right through the homepage that says watch YouTube meetings.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you so much.
Right
So the second question is that this project is under appeal at this time to further investigate the basically the sewage system and the leaching fields. Is that correct?
Attorney Shansky's answered that once, I think, but would you like to respond again, Attorney Shansky?
Thank you.
I'm
This is
sorry.
Attorney Marjorie Shansky. The separation distance only is under appeal at the Department of Public Health. There are no issues about the design of the septic system.
Thank you. All right, we have someone named Rob with a hand up. Could you identify
Hi.
yourself?
This is Rob Marzatelli from 20 Todd's Mill Circle. I apologize, I joined late, so I'm not sure if this is duplicative in my question. As I understand, the Madison Department of Public Health position is under appeal. However, to me, it's uncertain if the state of Connecticut Department of Public Health position that's dated September 1st, which rescinded their approval for the subsurface sewage disposal system back in December 22nd of 2021. So my question is, it seems to me that that letter is not under appeal. And if that's the case, then it appears to me, at least, that that position also indicates that it would indicate a 150-foot separation distance. So that's one of my questions. And quite honestly, the second part of it is, why isn't that under appeal? Because as I understand, it's only the Madison DPH position that's under appeal.
Attorney Shansky, would you like to answer?
Thank you. I believe I answered that in my preliminary comments, but the Department of Public Health considers itself to be part of the same appeal, and the Department of Public Health engaged in a dialogue with the engineer. So all of this is subject to review and correction for the misapplication of the Public Health Code by the Health Director.
Thank you. Barbara Decker has a hand raised.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Barbara Darrow at 49 Cottage Road. I wanted to ask the engineer, I know these are 1-bedroom units and I know we've been through that, but I'm wondering, because somebody on the applicant's side said they are theoretically one bedroom and, there's a feeling that other people may be living there. I'm wondering if there were calculations made on wastewater based on more than one person living in those units and what that number would be. I forgot what the number you said for the current application, but were calculations done for additional people in those units?
So for the record, this is Mike Ott. So all septic systems serving residential buildings are designed on a bedroom basis, a bedroom count, and it's assumed that there are 2 people per bedroom. So the daily wastewater flow per capita per person is 75 gallons per day for design purposes of public health code, and it's assumed there's 2 people per bedroom. So the design flow is based on 150 gallons per bedroom.
Aaron, if I could, I'd like to just pause for a minute and consult with our commissioners about how long we should continue entertaining questions, or if we don't have enough information to move to deliberation, if we should request an extension. Any commissioners have any thoughts about this? And Attorney Gelderman, if you are listening, and could maybe advise us on how long this process should be continued, and at what point should we request an extension, or should we move to deliberation?
Well, the deliberation period and the hearing period in the case of site plan approval is the same thing. It's 65 days from the date of receipt. The applicant may consent to extensions up to 65 days. So if the commission feels that it can't close the hearing and begin its deliberations, and even if it can close the hearings, if it doesn't feel it can make a decision within 65 days, then it needs to ask the applicant for an extension to do either one of those 2 things.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm wondering how the other commissioners feel, because I'm feeling like we're getting many of the same questions asked again and again. I don't feel like we're making much progress tonight, even though I've said repeatedly that we need to focus on any new issues. I'm inclined to move toward deliberation, but I want to see how everyone else feels. Ron, maybe start with you.
Yeah, for my part, I agree. I'm all for giving the public every opportunity. This is the 3rd time, and we're having questions from folks who didn't attend the first 2, or did, but didn't attend the first half hour and are asking duplicate questions. So I think we've run our course, and it's fine with me to close off after 3 separate hearings, 6 to 8 hours of opportunity.
Thank you. John?
I would agree with Ron. I mean, the written correspondence is significant. Had opportunity to read all of that. I think the questions tonight were okay, but I think you're also right. We're just covering old territory now.
Giselle, how about you?
I'm very comfortable moving on to deliberation.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that feedback from everyone. In that case, could I have a motion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sorry.
Oh.
Chansky.
Not so fast, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. We're all ears.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for your indulgence. I do have some summary remarks I'd like to make. I do want to respond to a couple of the questions. The citizen who wanted to dispute the fact of the pond, and the pond got a lot of focus and attention. We had wetland biologists and scientists at the time of the wetland hearing. We're fully confident with the information that's been provided about the pond. The same citizen disputed the density bonus. I refer her and the commission to the extent it's interesting, interesting to you, to Brian Miller's report, where he did charts and graphs of density comparisons, demonstrating that this is not the most dense development around, even in this neighborhood. That with respect to lighting, this will be building code compliant, and that is a dark sky full cutoff light situation. So got that citizen's question covered. With respect to the question that of Mr. Bodenson's about the runoff, I think whether or not it's important, and I think it shouldn't be, or may not be, to provide any calculations on the very small areas of the 5,400 square feet. As I heard it, Mr. Ott said that there are landscaped areas and lawn areas, and that only about 1,400 square feet of imperviousness, and that the storm sewers in Cottage Road and Mill Road could handle them. So, you know, if that needs to be drilled down on, then tell us now. But other than that, that is the professional engineer's testimony. And with respect to all of the members of the public, the only experts in the fields with which we have had this conversation with the commission, the only experts are the applicant's team. There have been no individuals with any particular credentials who have otherwise participated in this hearing. So we hear concerns and we hear speculation. Those are not evidence. So just to make that distinction. And to also say that Mr. Fertovic spoke twice this evening, and at neither time did he dispute the separation distance between his well and his septic system as not being 150 feet away, not being 150 feet away. So with that, Madam Chair, I would like to recap. This is an 830G application. I'm so glad that council is here to assist the commission. The burden is shifted from the applicant, who conventionally has the burden of establishing eligibility for a permit, to the commission to rely on sufficient evidence in the record of substantial public interest that clearly outweighs the need for affordable housing. Now, even though we don't have the burden, we have provided the commission with evidence of the substantial care with which this development has been designed. And we have provided reporting and testimony by qualified experts like Joe Versteeg about Connecticut Fire Safety Code, Connecticut Fire Prevention Code, and State Building Code compliance, present and future, because this is a code adoption amendment year. Carl Giordano, professional engineer from SLR, provided traffic and parking information that explains the sufficiency of the parking spaces, the development's accessibility for residents and for emergency and other vehicles, and the negligible impact of this development on traffic. Brian Miller, American Institute of Certified Planners, provided you with a planning report that describes the consistency of this development with the 2013 Plan of Conservation Development, and who demonstrated through actual Town of Madison budget information that there are myriad positions in the Town of Madison, including school teachers and other municipal workers, whose salaries would make them eligible for the affordable units at this development. I've recapped the details of the subsurface sewage disposal a lot tonight, but Mr. Ott has also demonstrated that the stormwater management plan treats and accommodates runoff associated with the development, and that it will not exacerbate offsite conditions. The limited dispute is about separation, and we will deal with that in due course. Landscape architect Abigail Adams has provided a robust landscaping plan with an extensive variety of native species that will be beautiful and that will provide ecological services, including habitat, food sources, and improved water quality for the pond. And this also happened as a result and through the wetlands process, including the Wetlands Agency's approval with which we come to you. This development is enhancing the function and value of the on-site pond that is currently adjacent to manicured lawn all the way to its edge with no pretreatment of runoff. We have discussed the proposed structure designed by architect John Matthews, which comes with a recommendation of the Advisory Committee on Community Appearance. We have provided an affordability plan that complies with the requirements of the governing statute and ensures the operation of the development will meet the legal requirements of affordability over time. The application also includes a coastal site plan application, given the site's location within within Madison's coastal boundary, there being off-site tidal wetlands. In the CAM application, the applicant has demonstrated that by location and by design, stormwater management, soil erosion and sediment control, there are no adverse impacts of the proposed development on coastal resources, and the proposed development is consistent with the goals and policies of the Connecticut Coastal Management Act. The town of Madison has a coastal resiliency plan and a committee that adopted it and deals with those issues. There's a chapter in the zoning regulations that deals with coastal management, and this commission has in its wisdom zoned this area for residential development. It is an appropriate development in a consistent location that will not that will enable the commission to make the required finding of coastal consistency for this development. In short, we have addressed every aspect of this development that ensures it to be beautiful, safe, and accessible, and that advances several goals of the Plan of Conservation and Development. It addresses the profound need for affordable housing in Madison, and it provides alternatives to the 92% single-family home, large lot development that dominates the development pattern in Madison. You may be interested to know that according to the 2022, is that this year? That seems awfully late. In accordance with the 2022 Madison Affordable Housing Plan, the average breakdown of single-family housing across the county, New Haven County, is 52%. 52% of most towns in New Haven County have that much single-family housing. And on a statewide basis, the number is less than 65%. Madison sits at 92% large lot single-family zoning, and that illustrates the imbalance. And the Plan of Conservation and Development recognizes this failure of the availability of a diversity of housing types, and the Cottage Road development represents one small step toward addressing that deficit. There is simply a profound need for affordable housing in Madison, where the town is currently credited by the Department of Housing with 1.68% affordable housing, where 10% is the goal the state has established to insulate a town from the affordable housing land use process. From an evidentiary perspective, Madam Chair, there is no countervailing evidence in the record. And because you have the burden, you, the commission, have the burden of providing or identifying a substantial public interest, of which there must be sufficient evidence in the record as a basis to deny this application, and that interest must outweigh the need for affordable housing, I would respectfully suggest that the substantial evidence in the record for approval speaks for itself. We urge the commission to approve this application. You may condition this approval on the final action of the Department of Public Health. I will also say that my client has agreed to participate with the town in road improvements and drainage on Cottage Road as may be necessary in collaboration with the town. And we are grateful. We are grateful for the time and attention that you have devoted to this application. So if there are no further questions, I thank you again. But if you have any further questions, please ask them before you close the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Shansky. Any further questions? In that case, could I have a motion to close the public hearing and that we move on to deliberation?
Carol, one quick question, and Pete, you chime in, but in the case where the commission may be seeking an extension to from the applicant with respect to decision making, not because this is the last regularly scheduled meeting Does that request need to be made while the hearing is still open?
Attorney Gelderman?
It does not, but as long as the hearing still is open, if Attorney Shansky is willing on the record to grant that extension and then maybe follow it up with a quick note, that would be terrific.
Indeed, since we're all here, I would inquire what the date of the meeting to which you are requesting the extension would be, and that is the extension to which we would agree, and I will indeed follow it up in writing.
Our next scheduled meeting is October 6th, Madam Chair.
And is that adequate for the commission?
That's a question for the commission.
Ron, you're muted.
Yeah, I thought we had a major planning meeting that night that has been scheduled. So will this be before or after that? If we move it, I'm not in favor of doing
This would
it,
take
but-
some time from that meeting, yeah.
Those details as far as before or after could be worked out with our planning consultant, but there could be time set aside at that meeting.
Very well, we will we will grant an extension or consent to an extension to October 6th, and thank you again.
Well, we haven't done it, have we?
We haven't really asked for it, I don't think.
Okay,
Um,
that's right.
Maybe we raised it as what are our options tonight?
Okay.
Should we move to deliberation or should we request an extension? And
Okay.
Aaron, did you want to add?
Madam Chair, you may move to deliberations and deliberate this evening, and that, in my opinion, would be recommended, so that staff can get some feedback from how the commission is feeling regarding the application, that would assist me in helping you draft a resolution for your next meeting. So it's not necessarily a need to continue at this very moment in this meeting, but it would allow you an extension to our next regularly scheduled meeting to make a decision. And as Attorney Gelderman indicated earlier, this is a site plan application that requires action by the commission within 65 days.
But we can also move to deliberation, see how it goes, and then see if we want to request that extension. And Attorney Shansky, thank you for making that offer to us as an option. I think we've been hearing so much that we do have a lot to sort of consider in this application. And actually with Attorney Gelderman here, it would be a good opportunity for any of us commissioners to ask questions about our responsibility and about the burden that the commission has in an 830G. So I think we all agree then that we could move to deliberation. We should move. So could I have a motion?
I move to close the public hearing then.
Close the public hearing first. Thank you. And a second? Second, John, I got you, heard you first. Any further discussion about that? If not, all in favor of closing the public hearing? Aye. Giselle, I didn't hear you. I think you're muted. Okay, and so could I have a motion that we move to deliberation?
I move we move to deliberation.
And a second?
I second.
Giselle, second. And any further discussion about that? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the public hearing is closed and we're now in deliberation. Who would like to go first with any questions or thoughts? And including questions for Attorney Gelderman.
So I have a question for Attorney Gelderman. So Attorney Shansky mentioned the developer would agree to road improvements and perhaps other conditions. Is there any legally binding way to include that?
Yes. Since it's been offered by the applicant, I don't know to what extent the offer, how much they're willing to do, but I think she said they're willing to collaborate with the town to work on that issue. generally speaking, in a site plan, conditions need to be authorized in the regulations, conditions of approval. Site plans are administrative decisions ultimately. Of course, this is an 830G, so that by definition, the application does not comply with the zoning regulations, but that doesn't mean that you can't place conditions on an approval, provided what the statute says is that approving a project with conditions that are not viable is basically the same as a denial. So if the conditions are viable and they don't basically kill the development, they're consistent with the development. And I would suggest that doing some work on Cottage Road would probably be viable. Then you can put that as a condition. You can make that a condition of an approval. The applicant always has the ability in an 830G application to come back to the commission rather than take an appeal. If they're not happy with the decision, they can come back within the appeal period with modifications to their application. So, for example, if you put a condition on an approval that the applicant felt was inappropriate, they can come back rather than take an appeal and with a plan that maybe suggests an alternative way to do something. If they think there's a better way, or they think you're being, unfair, or it makes the project unviable. And then the appeal period starts after that decision is made on the kind of the resubmission, I'll call it. So the answer is, yes, you can put those kind of conditions on an approval. And while I'm talking about conditions, I'll just, unlike most applications that come before you, the commission is allowed to condition its approval on the action of another administrative agency. Typically, you're not supposed to do that, but there's case law that in an 830G application specifically, that you can condition an approval on the subsequent decision or action of another administrative agency. So to the extent the septic separation issue is not resolved, it obviously has to be resolved, and you can make, if you elect to approve the application with conditions, you can make one of those conditions, obviously, that they obtain an approval and get a permit to build their septic system, which they won't get unless that issue is resolved.
Thanks.
Attorney Gilderman, how do we do that when there's no sort of deadline for that decision about the appeal to the Public Health Department? I mean, we don't know how long that will take. Does that you don't. But basically, it takes as long as it takes. A zoning permit wouldn't be issued on this development until that is resolved. It's conditional until that's resolved, and a zoning permit won't be issued. So we don't need to feel that we have to have that answer by our next meeting.
No, not necessarily.
Does the appeal time run while that is pending, that condition is unresolved?
If the appeal period is the same whether there's a condition or not.
Okay.
If someone wants to take an appeal, they have to take it during the appeal period, whether that condition has been met or not, unless the applicant resubmits, which is an option under 830G. Again, unique to 830G is an ability of an applicant to come back to the commission to try to deal with some of the issues that the commission may have had in its decision. If the applicant thinks doesn't like it or thinks there's an alternative, they can come back to the commission. Okay. But the appeal period is only told for that particular situation where there's a resubmission by the applicant. Otherwise, the appeal period is what it is.
Okay. I guess my take on the offer to work with the town on the road and drainage is a good faith offer and suggestion, but it's not like we have some arrangement where we're saying you must do this to Cottage Road and build it 18 feet wide and put in draining ditches there. It's just a wish and a promise. And so I don't know if that fits in your viability definition. It doesn't seem very viable. Plus, I'd already been always understanding as a planning commission member, we cannot require off-site improvements. We can't make them build Cottage Road over again. We can't make them put a traffic light at Mill. That's totally out of our power. So it just, and I accept that. I'm not fighting that battle, but I'm saying to have as a condition, oh, won't you go talk to the town again, seems not a worthwhile thing to put in there. I think it's buying trouble. We're sort of conditioning off-site improvements, but nobody knows what they are. So I would be against that myself.
That's reasonable. That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Off-site improvements can be a condition if the applicant agrees. And
right. But these are two
as you
vague.
said, here, there hasn't been a concrete offer of anything. It's been, we'll collaborate. So I understand your take.
And I appreciate the good faith. But just to make clear, the other things we can't deal with, the health department's going to decide their issue, we aren't. Inland Wetlands has decided their issue, we aren't. Apparently, if density and the amount of parking is just something we can't deal with on the 830G, correct? So that's not a battle we should be taking up.
Generally speaking, unless there's a correlation between density and parking and public safety or some other public interest, if there's not, then it's not an appropriate consideration.
Right. Okay. All right. But we have to tie it into that. Okay.
Correct.
And it has to be quite compelling, I think.
Has to be what the statute calls a substantial public interest.
Right, substantial.
In health, safety, welfare, or any other interest that the commission is allowed to consider. And that's what the statute says. So,
Attorney Gelderman, is there any way to quantify substantial?
Well, it's interesting. That's an interesting question because a lot of the courts have said that if there's basically a substantial public interest that will not be protected, it needs to be quantified. There needs to be a quantifiable impact on some substantial public interest. I've always personally been a little bit, I don't know what that is. I mean, I don't know how you quantify whether something is a fire safety danger or not, but case law, the statute doesn't say quantifiable, but case law has kind of said it can't. And I think what that means is it can't be speculative. It has to, there has to be a real identifiable risk to some substantial public interest. And again, that's the first thing you've got to identify. Then you've got to weigh that risk against the need for affordable housing. The third thing is then you have to decide if there's any reasonable changes to the application or the plan that might alleviate that, that risk. And all of those things have to be supported by substantial evidence. So that's the unique part of 8-30G. Now that only comes into play if an applicant takes an appeal. It's really the Affordable, it's the Affordable Housing Appeals Act, and this burden shifting concept comes into play when there's an appeal by an applicant. But of course, if there's no appeal by an applicant, if the commission approves a plan, even if a neighbor takes an appeal, that burden shift hasn't occurred. Then the neighbor would have the burden of proving whatever they've argued. So that's that, and sort of the conditional approval are the two of the sort of unique things about 830G.
Thank you.
And the resubmission. So the
Giselle,
first
any
thing,
sorry, go ahead.
not to interrupt, I'm sorry, Carol, but the first thing that the commission ought to do when it's reviewing this application or any other 830G application is seek to identify through substantial evidence what public interest may not be adequately protected. That's the first step. And then you weigh that against the need for affordable housing. And then you determine if you've answered, there is a need, a public interest that needs protecting. It's more important than affordable housing. And the third thing is, well, is there anything we can do with this application to make it, viable or to make it work? Any reasonable change. So obviously the first step is always determining what substantial evidence you have before you to determine that some public interest is going to be negatively affected by this application. And Attorney Shansky sort of alluded to something, and that is that generally most courts hold that substantial evidence means expert testimony. As opposed, substantial doesn't mean more or less. It means it's really a qualitative, not a quantitative analysis. So the quality of the evidence that's presented is what the commission relies on. Now, the commission is the finder of fact. The commission gets to take a look at any substantial evidence that's in front of them and determine what the commission feels, is correct. You're the fact finder there. So you don't, just because there's an expert doesn't mean you have to believe them. But generally speaking, if there's no evidence that contradicts an expert before you, it's hard to then support a decision with substantial evidence.
That's really helpful. So perhaps we could start by having commissioners express any concerns that they have about any substantial public interest that may be adversely affected by this application, focusing, I guess, on health and safety primarily. I think there are other legal matters that can be considered, but for our purposes, I think health and safety. Yeah, Giselle.
Yeah, that was the attorney really, that was really great commentary there. There are two things that stick out for me. One is traffic, and then the second is water drain off. It just seemed to not be fully explained thoroughly, and there seems to be some questions that still, maybe I missed something, but it just doesn't seem to be thorough. In terms of traffic, some unanswered questions regarding when the survey was taken. Don't know if that was answered. And then as far as water drain off, Ron had questions, but we never got a clear answer. They did say they would look it up. So that would be good to note, because that's important. And we did have public interest in that. And I mean, it stuck out like a sore thumb. But through my review of the videos and a little bit of today, traffic did come up once again. And I'd like that answered.
Giselle, did you have a chance to read the report? Or I think it was maybe a PowerPoint or a PDF that's on file from the what is it, SLR, the team that did the traffic study. Yeah. Did you have a chance to see that? Because it gave some answers, I think. I'm not sure. I think it does say when the survey was done.
October 21, I believe.
Yeah. And I think there was some concern raised by the public that, this area is a very seasonal summer area and that there's higher higher density, both in terms of housing, occupation, and residences, as well as an increase in traffic.
Right, the timing of that survey wasn't conducive to real traffic for the proposed plan.
Well, that's what they said. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to add to the traffic issue. my
Carol,
own-
can I make one
Yeah.
comment before you guys
Absolutely.
get too much
Yes.
into that?
Sure.
First, to the extent no additional information can come into the commission at this point in time because the public hearing is closed. So
Thank you.
I can give you answers to legal questions, but and Aaron could help you, but essentially no new information can come in now. The public hearing's been closed. You guys are stuck with what you've got. Second thing I wanted to make sure you understood is that the courts have held that traffic volume is not a public interest. Traffic safety is a public interest. Traffic volume, though, just the amount of cars that are being generated or are on the road, is not deemed to be a sufficient, a substantial public interest. But certainly traffic safety is. Sometimes volume translates to safety, but not necessarily. I mean, if it's only a volume issue, it's not a substantial public interest. There's a lot of case law on that. Just so you don't go off on an area that ultimately, isn't going to really help.
Yeah, I was going to go there. So thank you. I really appreciate that. And as far as safety with traffic, then, I mean, we've talked about access for fire vehicles and emergency vehicles. Would that be considered, Attorney Gelderman, would that be considered more on the mark for public safety rather
Yes.
than volume?
Yes.
And rather than disputing the public versions that we've had of different traffic volumes. I mean, I see how that's kind of not the point.
It's more anecdotal but it really isn't particularly relevant anyway. It's relevant. I don't mean it's not relevant. It's not a substantial public interest
On its
but,
own.
Yeah, right. But certainly access to the site or, emergency vehicles, and that's all public safety related. Some courts, I'll give you this, some courts have, their lower courts are a little divided on this. Some of the lower courts have said that fire operational issues are not relevant. If it meets the code, that's the end of the story. Other courts have said that operational issues are relevant. So when, for example, a fire marshal comes and says, my ladder can't get to that point in the building, so it's, I can't fight a fire if it happens there. Some courts have said, well, if the building's built to code, that really that's not sufficient in an 830G context. Other courts have said, yeah, we'll listen to that. That could be a factor. The appellate court and the Supreme Court have not yet weighed in on that issue. And I've been involved in 2 or 3 cases that had that issue, and all of them, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, got settled before we got to a decision by an upper court, by an appellate court. So.
I think the other big issue, obviously, is the well and the distance. And Attorney Shansky has offered to have that be a condition, really, as I understand. So how do other—
You can make that a condition whether she offered or not. That can, if you want to approve the project, that shouldn't stand in your way. The fact that you don't have an answer to that yet, if that's where the commission's going.
How do other commissioners feel about that?
Well, that obviously has to be a condition.
Yeah.
Couldn't hear you, John.
John, could you repeat that?
Well, it has to be a condition.
Yeah. Are there any other concerns, public interest concerns?
I think so. I don't know whether I'm so grappling whether they're substantial or not. I mean, I think the frustration is everybody agrees Cottage Road is a poor road. It's too narrow, it's not well maintained, but that's not a basis for turning this project down. It's not their fault Cottage Road is bad. It's the town's fault. It might be Engineer Ott's fault since he ran it for 13 years, but the point is, it's frustrating. And then you have the fact that Cottage Road ponds are also known as floods because it has 700 feet of road coming down 18 feet wide, and it pools up, ponds, floods in front of the property. But that's not the applicant's fault. That's an existing problem that's never been dealt with by the town. And so again, we have to be careful and say glaring defects out there, but we can't base our decision on those things, even though they have their own people who support them, say Cottage Road ought to be widened, and we have Deep coming in and saying, watch out, you got a problem on the road. It's just the way the law is or the rules are in Connecticut. So where does that leave us? Well, this is a site plan review, and we have some responsibility on the site plan review. And two of the matters that we're supposed to consider are, one, safe, adequate, convenient vehicular traffic, both within and without the site. I'm not talking about the number of cars already going by. And we have and so that's basically, it says we look at the location and dimensions of vehicular exits and drives. We have a right to do that. And then the second thing we can do under the site plan, even though it's very narrow for this particular project, we can consider the stormwater management plan. And why? We want to ensure provision for adequate storm drainage facilities to drain the site property while minimizing downstream flooding. I'm reading out of a regulation. So site plan gives and that's what this is a site plan review. So, so we can't, so what I'm wrestling with is we can't consider off-site problems that already exist, but it seems to me we can consider whether the on-site design is helping, hurting, or just neutral about those off-site problems. I mean, if they took the entire stormwater and flooded it on Cottage Road, I think that would catch your attention. So I guess what I'm trying to grapple with, are there any instances where we have the existing Cottage Road problem, both the nature of its narrowness and poor condition and its flooding? Is this project doing anything to make that worse? And if they are, is it substantial? And I guess that's what I'm sort of going through my mind. I look at Cottage Road. At the moment, both of these driveways, they've submitted the plan, meet Cottage Road and Mill Road 90 degrees. Their design skews both of those driveways. They're skewed so they meet Cottage Road and Mill at an angle. And maybe no big deal, maybe big deal. But the problem is the testimony is uncontroverted that larger vehicles are going to have to turn left out of Cottage Road, or if they turn right, they will turn right into oncoming traffic from the other lane on Cottage. Otherwise, anybody coming from Mill on Cottage makes a turn. If there's a larger vehicle that turns right onto Cottage Road, that vehicle will take up the entire road for a while and be in the oncoming lane. Now, Engineer Ott acknowledged that, he described it, but he said that's acceptable for small roads like Cottage. there was no dispute it was going to happen. But for some reason, it's not good on Route 1, but he said it was okay on Cottage. If you're the biker, the car, the pedestrian who has just turned on Mill on the Cottage Road, and you're going up, and suddenly a larger vehicle makes a right turn because of the turning radius, because of the skewed driveway, that larger vehicle is now in your lane coming towards you. Is that a substantial safety issue? This is the design of the applicant that is causing this. And you have to ask why. And I think the simple reason is the size of the lot, the size of the project. They couldn't get a driveway in there where they could square up to 90 degrees at Mill and Cottage. There's just not enough room. And so the larger vehicles have that problem. The other issue is Cottage Road, ponds and floods and rains. There's no dispute about it. The engineer was excellent describing how 700 feet of water, 18 feet wide, comes down and stops in front of their property. And if you leave it at that, no big deal. But at the present, as I understand it, there's no drainage off of this property to Cottage Road. It slopes back down towards the pond. So the developer, to do the design, has now taken, still unclear to me, is it 5,400 square feet or the quarter of an acre or the quarter of an acre plus 5,400 square feet? They are pouring some water out onto Cottage Road, that's stormwater. And that hasn't existed until this time. Why are they doing it? Well, they're doing it because of the size of the project and what they can get done on it. And the fact of the matter is, how much are they exacerbating the flooding ponding on Cottage Road? I was totally inept on trying to draw that out. We have no information of the volume, but it doesn't take this common sense a lot. If it's already flooding, anything going out there is a problem, in my opinion. If it were flooding and they weren't putting anything out there, I could care less. If it weren't flooding and they were draining out there and it didn't cause no problem. So I think those are the two safety issues I see that we have to grapple with. Are they substantial enough to be an issue? I'm leaning that they are, but that again is not the end of the question. As the attorney has told us, if they are substantial enough, does it outweigh the need for affordable housing? And I think Attorney Shansky made clear our town gets no gold stars for affordable housing. And to the town's credit, we have adopted an affordable housing plan just last spring. And I think everybody's on board to see this improve. But the question, and there's testimony in the record, that just a half a mile away, beginning next spring, Wellington is under construction. It will have 24 affordable housing units, a half a mile away on the same road known as Cottage Road. And does that make any difference? Well, it means we are getting more affordable housing that isn't counted in the current numbers, but it also is just down the street. And does that make any difference? And our affordable housing town plan says additional housing options should be more widely available throughout Madison, section 1.5. So there is a modest policy. So I guess what I'm thinking is that as bad as affordable housing here is in town, 24 units are going not very far away, closer to the food, the bus station, the bus stop and all that. And if there is a policy that we should disperse it throughout town, are we just beholden to take the next 6 that come along no matter what? Or do the safety issues of the turning radius with larger vehicles going in oncoming traffic and the contribution of additional flooding outweigh it? And then finally, can we solve this? Is there a condition that we could somehow create that says we can figure out the turning radius and we can figure out the additional storm water into the flooded road? And I just have to think, if it could have been designed to avoid skewed driveway and the turning radiuses and additional flooding, stormwater flooding, they would have designed it that way. I mean, it seems to me it's a issue of the size of the lot, the big project, and if we tell them solve the skewed driveway and solve the stormwater, I can't imagine they'll be able to. They have their design, and they'd have to re-ramp it totally up. So I'm open to conditions, viable ones, not illusory ones, but I'm not there yet. I'm just throwing out what I've seen from the evidence as possible health and safety issues that may be substantial enough to give us pause here. That's where I am.
Okay, thanks. John, any concerns? Public interest concerns?
Well, coming back to Attorney Gilderman, so I'm a little bit confused regarding the traffic issue, the ponding on Cottage Road, and the applicant's offer to, quote, work with the town to solve it. So Attorney Gilderman seemed to suggest that there is a way to legally bind the applicant to following through on that. But then in his answer to Ron, he said, well, if it's just a promise, maybe there's not a legally binding option. Is there a way to get the applicant to make improvements that are necessary in Cottage Road to avoid that ponding or get rid of it and to improve the safety? Because there will be more cars on that road, a little more traffic at that intersection.
The short answer is not without a specific sort of a voluntary specific condition that the applicant is willing to provide. In other words, you don't have the authority to condition an approval on off-site improvements. The only exception is if an applicant comes to you and says, I will do A, B, and C.
Okay.
The applicant, as far as I could tell, hasn't said that. They said they are willing to work with the town, but I don't know how you necessarily make that into a binding condition.
I see.
So,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difficulty.
I'd like to raise one more issue, and that was the letter from the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, which made a very strong statement about advising against new developments in flood zones. And yet also there was a clause that, again, it's sort of weighing the effect of this development, whether it marginally adds to exposure in light of the already developed nature of the surrounding area. I don't know if anybody else caught that and has thought about it very much, but in my mind, the area is already quite developed, and I think I feel safe in that this project is not going to risk life and cause additional risk of life to life and property. Given that if you zoom out and look at the whole area and its distance from both the Hammonasset River and the other wetlands and as well as to Long Island Sound itself. But did anyone else have any thoughts about that?
Well, that was my interpretation too. I mean, it's kind of an issue, for example, of evacuation. I mean, could new residents who are living there evacuate safely in the case of a hurricane, for example? And the answer is if there's 25 new people or 18 new people, yes. If there's 1,800, no. So it's, I think that's what they're getting at.
Yeah. All right, well, I think this discussion has been helpful, and Attorney Gelderman, we're very grateful for your help with this and your coming to the meeting. I'm thinking that we should ask for an extension, and that would give staff time to prepare information for us. And also just give us each time to think more about the issues that we've raised and the importance of affordable housing in Madison, and weigh that against any concerns we have about public interest issues.
Sometimes what staff can do with our help, if they need it, if Aaron needs it, is to draft resolutions of approval and denial. And, you know, then the commission will, the resolution of approval is a little bit easier to draft. A resolution of denial then would have to list, you know, go through the process of identifying public interest and so on and so forth. And that could be then edited by the commission if it's the commission's ultimate determination that the application should be denied. Then it can fine tune that draft resolution at its next meeting. You can also have a resolution of approval, which doesn't have to, you don't have to identify a public interest in a resolution of approval because it's an approval, not a denial. So, so that if Aaron has no problem doing that, we've done that in the past where there wasn't a clear sort of consensus. Sometimes in the context of these discussions, there's a fairly clear consensus of where the commission's going. I don't sense that you're there yet. So it might be helpful for the commission to have two resolutions to take a look at and then fine tune them, if that works for the commission.
I think that would be hugely helpful and relieve us of this heavy burden that we're feeling. Aaron, are you willing to do that? That's a great suggestion, Attorney Gelderman. Thank you. Ron, are you raising?
Yeah, I think what could very well happen is we could have a different commission in 2 weeks, which is fine with me. I'm just saying we may have a full commission in 2 weeks because two are missing, but two could show up and two could disappear. That's just that can or cannot make a difference. So just if one of our goals is to be as wide open as possible, it'd really be nice to have all 6 of us here or 5 of us here or whatever the number is going to be. Secondly, Attorney Shansky is very smart, capable, experienced. If she thinks there's a condition that is worthwhile, reasonable, enforceable, whatever, with respect to their good faith proposal to work with the town, that is on the more enforceable side than the good faith side, she would have time to draft something that would be interested to us, I think, of interest to us. But she certainly doesn't have to.
Well, she can't really submit anything to the commission at this point in time. There's nothing that precludes me from having a discussion with Attorney Shansky, but yeah, and remember, there's the resubmission option also under 830G, where in the 15 days following a decision, following the publication of your decision, they can come back with an alternate plan. So if they hear certain things, they can address that in a new plan that they can resubmit to you. That's a possibility, at least.
So what do we do?
Normally, you would, if you've gotten Attorney Shansky's permission or consent rather for an extension, you would basically close the deliberation session and continue it to the next meeting. If you're finished for the night.
unless the four of us want to vote.
One thing I just wanted to add, because John, I heard at the beginning that you are an alternate. If you're seated during the deliberation as a member, that's fine. But if you're not, any alternate member of the commission who's not actually seated during deliberation is not entitled to either to participate, to vote, or to even ask questions. So as long as you don't have the full membership there and you're seated, you're fine. But if the full membership is present for deliberations, then unfortunately you are not permitted to take part.
Okay.
I just so there's no confusion down the road. Maybe it'll, who knows, as Ron said, who knows who's going to be here or not going to be here. So.
And just for further clarification, our full members who were not here will be able to participate.
As long as they can put on the record that they have reviewed the video and any exhibits that were offered.
Okay, thank you. Are we all comfortable then requesting the extension and continuing?
Unless John's dying to vote.
We can extend. I'll take my chance.
Okay.
Can I have a motion
I move.
that we extend and a second?
Second to extend.
And any further discussion?
Marjorie will get a written consent, I'm sure, to us. She can hear me, but she's not allowed to talk.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that before we even
Yeah.
went into deliberation, so that's just confirmed again.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you so much, everyone.
Pete, thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Good
thank
night.
you again. All right, moving on to our next public hearing. I don't think this will take very long, we hope. This is 22-19 New Road, and it's for a zone boundary change for a planned development district. Could I have a motion to open the public hearing for 22-19 New Road?
Just to confirm who we're, everybody in your party as well, so I make sure everybody is here, Attorney Shansky, for you. I have Michael Harkin, Kenny Horton,
Yes,
Steve Horton, John Wicko,
John Wicko and Dave Sullivan.
That's it?
Yep.
Excellent, thank you.
So you're ready to move ahead, and if we could open the public hearing for 22-19 New Road.
I so move.
Thank you, Ron. In a second.
Second.
Thank you, John. And unless there's further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Giselle, you're muted, I think. All right. So, Erin, did you have any staff comments you wanted to make to begin, or should we move to the application, to the applicant?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I did submit a staff report to the commission, which was also shared with the applicant, identifying just the general standards of Section 32 of the zoning regulations, which is a planned development district. This is your first experience reviewing petition pursuant to this section. If anyone had specific questions regarding my staff report, I'm happy to answer them. I don't necessarily feel I need to read its entirety into the record.
Thank you.
No, you don't. Unless the
Thank you,
other side
Erin.
hasn't seen it.
No, I indicated that was shared with the applicant as well.
Okay, then, Attorney Shansky, would you like to begin?
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the commission. I'm Attorney Marjorie Shansky, and I represent 155 New Road, Madison, LLC in this planned development district application With me this evening are Kenny Horton, and I don't know if Matt was here as well, representatives of the applicant, Michael Harkin, professional engineer who designed the site plan, Dave Sullivan, professional engineer who is from SLR Consulting, who did the traffic study, and our architect, John Wicko. And indeed, the town planner has distributed an informative memo for you describing the PDD process from the regulation. And I want to spend just a moment reminding the commission that we came to your predecessors primarily in 2019 with this text amendment to the regulation that is now section 32. Planned development districts are recognized by the courts in Connecticut, including the Connecticut Supreme Court, as a flexible zoning technique and alternative to standard Euclidean zoning that is represented in the rest of, or in the large part of your zoning regulations. A planned development district is a floating zone. And by that we mean that the text governing the PDD exists in the zoning regulations. That's section 32. But until somebody applies to actually land the planned development district on an eligible piece of property, the zone just floats as text and then becomes landed on application. The PDD process has been devised as a two-step process. We are here this evening on step one. Step one is the master plan with a general site plan that describes the intention and content of the planned development district, as well as traffic information and some architectural information. So the commission gets to assess the desirability and appropriateness of landing the PDD on the subject parcel. And once the master plan is approved, the applicant returns to the commission for detailed site plan review. And that will include all of the details of stormwater management, soil erosion and sediment control, landscaping, all of the lighting, all of the finer details that demonstrate consistency with the standards of the PDD and the site plan regulations of the town of Madison. I think that our trip to the Advisory Committee on Community Appearance is illustrative of this process. I believe the town planner has put the minutes of that meeting into this record. We visited with ACA with a preliminary design of the proposed medical office building. And the committee was able to review it for scale and massing and welcome its appropriateness or agree to its appropriateness. And once the master plan has been approved, we will return to ACA with the required set of plans with landscaping, materials selection for its actual recommendation. So are there any questions at this point? That's the broad procedural construct that governs the PDD. So our program this evening is to start with Mr. Harkin to describe the site and the development. We will then move to Mr. Sullivan to talk about the traffic study and conclude with Mr. Wicko and the proposed structure. I will conclude by saying that this plan, as the town planner discusses in her memo, this plan and this proposal is an embodiment of the 2013 Plan of Conservation and Development, which identified exactly this parcel. Two parcels. There's actually a phase one and a phase two. Phase two will be residential across the street. We'll be back with that at some point. But these were identified in the future land use map as potential opportunity housing, commercial development opportunities and residential opportunity development. And in the Plan of Conservation and Development, it posited the idea of adopting a plan development method for this kind of development. So with that, I give you Mr. Harkin.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Harkin. I'm a professional engineer and principal of Harkin Engineering, located at 78 Wolf Hollow Lane in the town of Killingworth, Connecticut. Again, here tonight on behalf of my client, and I'm just going to share my screen right now. I'm going to get to our overall colored site plan. Aaron has been kind enough to Let's see what I got here. Make me a presenter. And just bear with me in 1 second, the drawing will load. Out in the country, we're a little slow here with the internet speed. Should be up any second. There you go. Can everybody see that?
Not yet.
No, figures.
No.
How about now?
No.
It is so slow in
Still
Killingworth,
loading.
Connecticut.
There we go.
We got to get the horses moving to get the internet flowing. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So again, guys, this is on the south side of New Road. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Again, we're here tonight on behalf of our client, 155 New Road, New Road Madison LLC, for their project on New Road. And we're just going to zoom in just to show you the subject parcel information. New Road, excuse me, abuts Duck Road. This parcel is known as map 60, lot 18. Has a comprised area of 2.731 acres. And again, the owner slash applicant is 155 New Road Madison LLC. And as you know, the representative Kenny Horton is on with us tonight. This is right down the street from Town Hall. And it's right at the intersection that you can see here of Duck Hill Road and New Road. And it's right before we get to the on and off ramps on the Hammonasset connector. And to the north is directly the town hall. So the parcel itself and the way the site has been designed is that the building, which is an office medical use, is located on the westerly section of the property. We selected the driveway location, engineering wise, based on the amount of sight distance we have for the cars coming and going off of Old Duck Hill Road and coming on New Road. Directly adjacent to our driveway entrance is the Connecticut Light and Power entrance on New Road. So basically, when we're at this intersection, we can see both westerly and easterly, the farthest portion. If I was to move that driveway anywhere along this area, I would start to shortchange the view corridor in each section. So the best position for the driveway is as far west as we can, which you can see here. So we have a 12-foot wide entry lane entering the project. And as you can see in brown, we have the medical office building here. Off to the left side is really the loading zone and an area where people that are doing the maintenance on the building can park. We have recycling and refuse area, which is going to be screened. It's easy, and the turning and swing distance have been made for a fire truck to pull in here, a tractor trailer truck to pull in here, and a garbage truck. They can all easily access that and make a full back out movement if need be. And it's also interesting enough when you get in here for circulation, the fire truck, the garbage truck, and everybody can circulate around. And if they wanted to pull directly in, they can come from this angle too. So as a potential person entering this facility and wants to utilize the main entrance, which is on the easterly portion of the building, they would come down this driveway and they would have the option of pulling into any one of these driveway stalls. Up against the building, we have 5 handicap parking spaces. 1 is van accessible. And then we have a sidewalk that virtually runs around, I would say 90% of the building, as you can see here where my cursor is. We also put the sidewalk in. Again, Attorney Shansky had mentioned there is a phase 2, which is across the street, which will be coming in at a later date, but we gave the option for walking pedestrian access out to New Road. As we come through, you can see we have the general parking area located throughout. We have the traffic islands, which will be landscaped. We have trees and site lighting in each one of those. And then to the southerly portion of the property line, we have a small retaining wall that runs along the length as well as guide rail. And the reason for that is we're just trying to flatten out the grades and make this area as flat as possible for parking. The wall is estimated at a minimum 2.5 feet in height. In some areas, it might be 3. Again, that's just to prevent any grading onto the state of Connecticut property, which you can see here where my cursor is. So the way the site is set up as far as drainage, all the area is pitching where my cursor is away from the building and headed to a large detention basin located in the easterly portion of the site. That detention basin is not only taking our site drainage, it's actually taking the drainage from Duck Hill Road and the town road of New Road. There's a set of catch basins that comes across and currently discharges on this parcel. So what we basically did is we made this detention basin sufficient enough to have a 0 net increase in post-development runoff when the site's designed. Basically, in terms, the same amount of water flowing off the site now will be the same amount of water flowing off the site when this project is developed. The septic system for the medical building will be located underneath the parking lot. It's important to note that there's beautiful sand and gravel Class A soils on this site. So, you know, it's very well draining. So as we come into the site again, we handled the storm drainage. We looked into the septic criteria. We looked into building placement. We also look into traffic flows. We looked into stormwater management. And then we looked at traffic circulation. Every one of these aisle widths are wide enough. They're 24 feet to circulate a tractor trailer or a fire truck through. And we have great traffic patterns throughout. You can see these little lines signify stop signs. So if you pull down this area, you have to stop, come around again, stop. And then as you exit the subject site, you can see we have a double intersection, double turn lanes, I should say. One lane going to the left, to the west, which would be towards town. And then we have a right turn lane onto New Road, headed towards the connector in Old Duck Hole, in Duck Hole Road. So with that being said, that's the site plan in general. The site sign would be pretty small, located in the driveway area. At the time of the finished site plan for the site, again, remember, this is just a master plan. At the time of the finished product, we'll have a full detailed sign and sign application when we come through. Obviously, at that point, we would have full septic design and analysis and full detention basin. Basically, what this map is showing that we can accommodate all the requirements based on the planning and zoning regulations, the parking, the setbacks, the green area. You could see that the green area that we have shown is grass and landscaping. We've made, split up the parking areas with landscaped islands located throughout. And it just made it easier for the storm drainage to flow with the configuration that we have. So with that being said, and this is a great position as we're at our driveway, you can either go left towards town hall, or left towards town, or take a right to head to the New Road, Duck Hole Road intersection to turn this over to David Sullivan, our traffic engineer, to discuss this Duck Hole Road, New Road intersection, which it's important to note that we've had many, many discussions over the last couple of years regarding this site and the site adjacent across the street. And one of the things that we've talked to town staff and Aaron brought up is to do a full detailed traffic analysis of this intersection. We've sat down, we've talked to the police department. The police department has said that this is one area where there's a lot of accidents, and they also had us look into that. So we did hire Mr. Dave Sullivan to look into it. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and be quiet for a little bit, and then turn it over to Dave Sullivan.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. David Sullivan. I'm with SLR Consulting, and my offices are in New Haven. I manage the traffic and transportation planning group. If I may, I'll share my screen. I have a short presentation. Let's see. I'll do that one. Okay. How's that? Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. So we did, as Michael indicated, we did a traffic evaluation, and we looked at really both phase and phase two, but primarily at this point, phase one being the commercial portion. So we reviewed existing conditions, which included assembling new traffic counts for our analysis, but we also took a really hard look at the crash data in the area. Based on our initial reviews, we made some recommendations for the intersection of New Road, Duck Hole Road, and 450, the connector, the M&S connector. We then did the traditional impact analysis where we generated traffic volumes for the commercial piece. We added that to the existing traffic, did our analysis, and determined what, if any, traffic impacts there would be. And then we added on top of the analysis the residential development or the phase two traffic, just to make sure whatever recommendations we did have at the time would carry the day for a second phase, and we wouldn't be relooking at this. Typically when we talk about the accident statistics in these, and I'm making my presentation, usually it's about a 10-second presentation, but I think it was important to really take a hard look at what the accidents were. To give you some idea, we look at 3 years worth of accident data, and we looked at it up and down Duck Hole Road and Hammonasset Connector. We also looked on New Road and focused a little bit on this intersection primarily. Just to give you some idea, down at the I-95 ramps, the eastbound or northbound ramps, there was 12 accidents in that 3-year period. At this intersection, there were 18 accidents in that 3-year period. So right off the bat, it tells us that we have to take a harder look. And what you see in the blue arrows are some of the ones that stuck out to us. Why did they stick out? Well, what we found is a lot of these accidents are vehicles crossing the wide open expanse of I'll call it 450 now, because it does change names in this area. But you can see there's essentially 6 lanes plus the median. So there's a long way to go. So if you're taking a left turn out of Duck Hole Road to go to I-95 ramps, you have a long way to go. It's got a little bit of an offset and skew. So there's a number of things here. So we looked at it. We did have some conversations. We talked to the police chief, among others, the town staff, and we came up with a recommendation that we think solves a lot of these problems. So essentially what we did is took the approach of let's eliminate the need to cross all of the main road at one time. So we split the intersections. So for example, if you were on New Road and you wanted to go to Duck Hole Road directly across the way, now you would cross on an angle, 7 lanes of traffic, and very difficult maneuver, a lot of pavement to traverse. So now you would take a right turn only. So you would take the first stage of that movement and then sit in a new left turn lane. So you would take a right turn, get into the left turn, and then you would take the second part of that maneuver, much safer, because you're not trying to negotiate traffic in both directions, plus this big open area that exists in the middle. To do this, we'd have to make some modifications, physically cut back the raised median here, and we recommend doing the rest of it at this time with paint. This would be new curbing and some landscaping on this corner here. So this is a concept we're recommending. We've mentioned it to the owners. They're willing to do something like this, but of course it is a state highway, and this improvement would have to be vetted through DOT, through your town local traffic authority and things like that. But this is something that we think is very viable and a very positive improvement out here. So getting to some of the more traditional stuff, the traffic, this isn't everybody's way, but the traffic volumes that would be generated by the commercial medical office piece would be 93 trips in the morning, 117 in the afternoon peak hour. And again, this is based on Institute of Transportation Engineers basic statistical information. We have done a number of these. Some of these have been built recently, and we found these numbers to be conservative for Connecticut, particularly along the shoreline. I won't go through all of this. This is in our report. There's two things I'd like to point out. One is in the green, that's the intersection of New Road and Duck Hole Road at the unimproved intersection. And what you can see there, essentially, I'll point out the westbound left through right. You can see that movement is operating at levels of service F in the morning and D and E in the afternoon. So, that's a poor level of service movement. It functions, but it's not great. When we go to the blue here, the blue is under the new configuration. And under that configuration, we essentially have two intersections. One of the intersections is at New Road. The second intersection to the south is at Duck Hole Road. But what's important is we now no longer have these D's, E's, and F's. All of the movements and all of the approaches with the improvement would be at levels of service A and B and C. So a significant improvement from a safety standpoint, but also from an operational standpoint. The remainder of our analysis intersections, we see no change in the levels of service. So in conclusion, without the mitigation, traffic conditions generally, levels of service would remain the same. And I did mention to you the Duck Hole Road westbound approach, level service D to E in the afternoon, level service F in the morning. However, with the intersection improvements, the safety and the operations can be improved. We, of course, as I mentioned, would have to coordinate with DOT, the local traffic authority, town staff regarding the improvements. And by doing so, we can improve the levels of service, particularly coming off of Duck Hole Road to C from that level of service F. And lastly, as I mentioned, we tested what happens if we add the traffic on for phase 2, the residential development, and essentially the same results in terms of level of service were found. So with that being said, I will be happy to take any questions, or I'll just pass this back. I'll stop my share.
No questions. I'm ready to roll. If I can share my screen. Aaron, yeah. Let's see. I guess this would be. All right, I'm showing the an aerial. As everyone talked about, the building is 29,980. It's 3 stories and located on the high side of the site, which is here. The closest properties that we use for context would be the Eversource, CL&P, and we have the 2 service centers on 95. And the context of 95 is also part of the design and building. The building itself is a medical office with 3 floors, the largest floor being at the grade level of 10,655 square feet. And they get progressively smaller as you move up to the 3rd floor, which is 9,200 feet, with a design scheme of using smaller architectural elements to identify certain portions of the building, and those extend up beyond the parapet roof
Excuse me, John.
Yes.
We're still looking at the aerial view.
Oh, okay. Let me. It was new to me. It didn't. I had to select the screen, so I need to get back to the share screen, which I'm not sure how to do. Actually, I don't see it.
You need the red stop share.
Yeah, I'm in a little. Oh, here it is. Okay. So stop share. Then I need to go to that one. Okay, thank you, Marjorie.
Welcome.
Is that good?
Yes.
So we're at the building now, the PDF, first floor, second and third floor. The entrance, which I think Mike was pretty clear about where that is, and pretty visible in that northeast corner as you're approaching up from the highway interchange, and also the major parking lot. I guess I'll have to do this again. Sorry, I have so many things to show you. I can't wait. Okay. Let's see, there's a video I made, and I don't see it. Well, let's let me try that. Show all windows.
John, I think if you share the screen
Here we
on the
are.
upper left side, it will give you
Yeah.
your whole desktop, and you'll be able to
Okay.
use it like your computer.
Okay, I've got that. Then, so I've got a little animation of the building as you're coming up from New Road and the front of the building at New Road. And then this facade is when you're entering the driveway, and then you get the backside, which would really front 95, which has a big presence, and then you, as you're driving around, you're going into the parking lot, and you get the frontal view of the entrance and some more of the architecture that we've designed. And let's see. I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to go to the color elevations, which here we are. And this is a rendition of the building with the shadows and colors and materials with the more realistic setting. Architecturally, the building is designed with this main central box, which is in this gray material. And then, like I said, we have some architectural features that will identify different sections of the building. The corners, this is the entrance from, also seen from New Road in the parking lot. And then one of the other towers, which is visible from 95, they have some vertical siding, metal panels is what we're proposing. We incorporated a gray brick at the base to kind of anchor the 3-story building and have some smaller scale to the where the pedestrian is. We have building elements that kind of intersect and attach to the main rectangle, and we've used primarily a horizontal plank siding that identifies those elements. And doors and windows are high-grade commercial items that you can see are rendered in black. And so the exposed angular roofs and some of the small architectural roofs, we're going to clad in a galvalume. It's a kind of a silver metal, and the rest of the roofs will be HPDM flat roof, which you don't see, but is very durable. The height of the building is, I'm not going to bounce around to the architecturals, but all this information is on the PDFs. The height of the building, this main box is 41 feet, 6 inches. And these elements, the entry tower is 54 feet to the very top, and 47 foot is the height of this element, which is on the back side, I'm calling it. The allowable maximum is in this district is 60 feet. So we're under those. I could get, that basically describes the building. I could get further into the design elements. I have a three-dimensional view that I could use if we have any further questions about the building, and we can spin the building around if you're interested. But that describes the building pretty well at this level.
You can turn it up.
I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, if you have any questions, I'd love to entertain.
Madam Chair, this is Attorney Shansky. I would call the commission's attention to the actual petition and narrative that was provided at the time of the submission. It goes through the utility plans, and it also has a more detailed discussion of consistency with the requirements of Section 32 of the regulations and consistency with the Plan of Conservation and Development. And with that, and with thanks to my team of experts, that is the master plan that we're placing before the commission this evening.
Thank you. I do have a quick question. Phase 2, how many units are you thinking of for that residential building?
How many units altogether?
Yeah.
Right now, the working units, again, we're only really talking about phase 1 at this juncture, but phase 2,
I
I
understand.
believe is going to be about 42 units
Okay.
potentially.
Thanks. Just good to know for the traffic too.
Yes, and it's important to know, and Mr. Dave Sullivan can speak to that. That's why David took that into consideration with this traffic study. He took
Right.
in phase 1 and phase 2. So we're only doing this really once, and we can fully design correctly that intersection and improvements.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I had a question.
Ron?
Yeah, so maybe to the traffic engineer or the attorney or engineer. It strikes me we're sort of in the same situation. We have a plan, and the traffic engineer and the engineer have acknowledged there is a problem. The plans show it. Traffic out on the highway. And then the solution is for the state to do something with their cooperation. So where does that leave us? I mean, there's a clear traffic issue. They themselves cannot solve it. They need the state to cooperate. When and if that would happen, and all the issues of paying for it. And those are off-site improvements. My impression is we can't require, but they're handing us information. There's a significant traffic problem. So somebody explain how we proceed.
Who wants to take the first stab at it?
Let me talk first about the improvement in the DOT's participation in this. So this particular building isn't, and parking, even with the residential, will not qualify it for OSTA review, Office of State Traffic Administration. So any recommendation we make here would be through the district office and an encroachment permit. And we would approach them saying, this is something we would like to do. And what we would have to demonstrate is that it's a solid improvement, that it meets the DOT standards, and it's up to their standards. Right now, what you're seeing is a concept. The actual drawings that they would approve would have details of the curbing, the pavement thickness, the radii, how thick the paint is, what the radius is of the end of the painted islands. All of those things would have to be reviewed by them. Now, the first part of it is up to me to make sure that it's a representative improvement that they will improve, and I think it is. We do this all the time, and we've worked with Michael on a number of projects where we've done this. So that's important. The second thing is that it accomplishes what DOT would consider positive benefits. Now, this has been looked at. Michael mentioned a couple of years that we've been talking about it, or that the team has been talking about it with various people. My understanding is this has been talked about much longer than that. As a matter of fact, at one time the state had they've acknowledged problems there and had a recommendation for a very modest striping adjustment, where they would take the 2-lane section coming southbound and leave it 1 lane for a longer period of time. So in other words, if you were coming out of New Road, you would only be facing 1 line of cars coming southbound instead of 2. Very modest improvement. In my opinion, after looking at the accidents, it probably wouldn't solve the vast majority of the problem, because the vast majority is crossing that entire sea of pavement going from New Road over to Duck Hole Road. So the two things are, does it solve the problem? Is it a problem that they're aware of and would welcome a suggestion for an improvement? And number 3, are we providing something that makes sense and meets their standards? And I think all 3 of those boxes are checked here. Nonetheless, we can't guarantee at this point, what we would do before we got the final approval is do more detailed drawings, have some preliminary conversations with the state and get their initial feedback. But we're not going to get their final approval until we go for an encroachment permit way down the line.
And Ron, just to add on to that, when we started this process, we talked to the police department, and they acknowledged that this intersection had a lot of issues. That kind of triggered us into hiring David, as well as Erin when she came in as the town planner, and even the person before her, Mr. Dave Anderson, brought that to our attention when we started this years ago. So we all know in town, and everybody knows it's a poorly executed intersection. What we've done is we've brought David in to do a redesign. That's his professional opinion. That's going to work absolutely better from what it is now, from a level of service F and D and E to bring it up to, I believe it was a C on some of those. I mean, that's a huge beneficial increase. Now, the payment and hanging our hat on DOT, in my experience, having done this on many projects, it's not DOT that's paying for this. Generally, it's the developer that has to ante up and pay for these improvements. So DOT is not going to say no if there's a beneficial improvement that has shown works to them that they don't have to pay for. So unfortunately, it comes down to our client having to foot the bill on this project. So I hope that answers your questions between, my answer and Dave's answer. I can elaborate further if you have any additional. Oh, I forgot the general. Marjorie, what do you have to offer?
Thank you. Attorney Marjorie Shansky. So Dave said it, although he said it so subtly that it may have been missed. And Michael has just said it again, that the developer is offering this improvement. And so the first thing I would like to do, Commissioner, is distinguish this. This is not the same thing that we had in the previous application, because the contingency, if you will, in this case, is that because it is a state road, we cannot blithely offer and execute this improvement without the state blessing it. And Dave and Mike have just described the process to pursue that. As a general matter, offsite improvements are not permissible to impose unless there's an essential nexus between the development and a rough proportionality about the amount of offsite improvement. So if a development is not creating, this problem exists, we're not creating this problem. So there really isn't an essential nexus between what we are offering or proposing to do here. But because we are cognizant that there is an existing situation that cries for a remedy and the developer is willing to resolve it or to improve it in considerable ways, he is making this offer. And it comes together with the request for the development. So yes, you are generally constrained from offsite improvements unless there's an essential nexus, and then it has to be roughly proportional. Like you couldn't require them to pave like all the way down to I don't know where. But in this particular case, this improvement is being offered.
Okay. I thought it was being described. Thank you.
Well, then all the more important that we explain in more detail.
Any other questions or clarifications from the commissioners? Do we have, Erin, do we have any attendees from the public who would like to ask questions?
I have two. The first is Corey. Corey, if you can identify yourself for the record.
Hi, Erin. This is Barbara Moore at 20 Edinburgh Lane. I live near the proposed intersection change.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to point out something for the traffic expert to keep in mind in his traffic plans. A couple weeks ago, there was, I guess, a fatal accident at that proposed intersection just a couple weeks ago. All that was left was a rubble of cars and firemen and policemen just kind of mulling over the accident, and there were no victims visible, so I assume they were carted off to a hospital. So there's another thing you need to sort of keep in mind. Just down the street from the proposed intersection, the zoning commission is sort of poised to accept a new affordable housing. And that's going to add 36 new additional vehicles on the road, which are currently not there. But if this proposal goes through, they will be there. So please keep that in mind because our safety is in your hands. Thank you.
Next is Jim Carson. Jim, if you can identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name's Jim Carson. I live at 94 and 110 Duckhole Road. We primarily face both Phase A and Phase B of your project. The only question I had was, in both phases, there's looks like there's going to be a significant amount of pavement, and we all know that there's a aquifer that feeds wells on our property. Will that pavement affect how much well water we receive?
Yeah, I could take a stab at that. Yep. So since the inception of this project, we've known that this is an aquifer protection area. There's been previous applications on both these sites that have gone up to the state and DEP. About 2 years ago, when we started this, we've had meetings with Connecticut Water. We've had meetings with DEP, with the former person at the state, as well as the town, just to have initial discussions. The amount of water that's added will be actually infiltrated into the ground. So one of the requirements on the previous go-arounds was that they were worried about, hey, what's the use of these buildings? At the time, nobody had a use. And when we had mentioned that it was going to be a medical building, they were more so concerned, they being the Connecticut Water Company that's in charge of the aquifer, if we were going to be discharging any pharmaceuticals or potential contaminants? And the answer is no. Any medical waste obviously gets carted off and taken off site. And the only real water getting infiltrated back into the ground is the parking lot water from our site, the roof leader water, which we can basically treat with different approaches from an engineering standpoint. For example, let's just say if there's any salt or any sand used in the parking lot, well, we can get 4-foot deep catch basin sumps to collect it, and we can put hoods on the catch basins. So all that material physically stays in the catch basin. We can treat it, we can suck it up. Additionally, before our storm drainage system is discharged into the detention basin, we could put what we call a swirl concentrator that takes all the chemicals out. And as a requirement with the town of Madison, we have to have a stormwater management plan for this site. So that is going to be a documented plan that's basically implemented almost every quarter. And logs are basically taken in a book. And then if the town wants to see a town engineering department, we will have that on site. That's besides standard practice. That's a standard practice that the Horton Group institutes on their sites. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
I have Matthews. Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yes.
This is John Matthews, office at 817 Boston Post Road, and also a town resident. I would just like to say that I've worked with Kenny Horton for the last 3 years. We've worked on a lot of different potential uses of this site. And I think the site he's presenting to you guys is terrific. And I think the town would really benefit from this, and I throw my whole support behind this.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, John.
Jim Carson again, perhaps a follow-up to his previous question. Jim, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Yep, Jim Carson, 94 and 110 Duckwell Road. Thank you, Michael. That did pretty much answer my question. The only thing I was concerned about is what is the possibility of well water testing during the beginning and ending phases of construction? And also, is there considerations for light pollution and pretty much our driveway at 94 into that traffic control pattern? We have a difficult time all the time getting in and out. So it's right across the street, but it looks like that might influence how we come and go every day.
Yeah, I can speak with regards to the site and the lighting itself. It's actually a real different site for us to work on, because the area where the parking is almost dropping down in elevation about 10 feet from the roadway. So that whole parking area, you really don't see until you're on top of it on New Road. So if you're driving down Duckwell Road, you won't even see any of the cars parked there because it's dropped down almost subterranean 10 feet. The lighting plan itself, 100% will meet all requirements of the town of Madison. It's full cutoffs, no oversight glare. It's important to know, I know this is just a master plan, but we did look into the site lighting. Obviously, when we come back with a full site plan, it would have to have zero spill off onto adjoining sites, which means that we'll have a full lighting plan done with a professional that shows that by the time you get to every property line, you won't have any light spillover. So you won't be seeing this big illuminated parcel from your house. Additionally, what is good is we've looked into the phase 2 as we're designing phase 1. And phase 2, we have a lot of landscaping that will also protect the visual representation of the site from your parcel, Jim. With the traffic aspect, I would have to turn that over to Dave Sullivan to answer that. So Dave, you can take a stab at Jim's concerns regarding his parcel.
Yeah, let me try to find out which parcel is yours. I pulled up an aerial you were talking. Okay, can you see the aerial? Where are you talking about? Over across the street here? Or
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me.
yes,
Yeah, that you had your, yep, right there. That's my driveway. And
Oh.
it actually serves 4 houses and a riding school, which has large trucks, tractor trailers, and a lot of traffic every day.
okay. We are not impacting that. So right now you could take a right in and a right out. There's the median here. And
Correct.
we-
You have to go right and then do a U-turn at the end by 110, our other house, and then come back
Correct.
to this town.
We, as it stands now, we're cutting this median back to about here. So you would have the same, theoretically, the same. I suppose there would be some ability. Let me see if I can pull the I'll pull the improvement up again.
Sorry, I know it's late.
It's okay. Okay, so here's that driveway now. Under the improvement, you can see that the median is being proposed to be cut back. What
Yep.
we show here is a painted median, which would basically tell you as you're approaching it, you should take a right turn out. Now, there wouldn't be a raised median there physically stopping you, but the intention here was to maintain the existing movements that you have today and not change that.
The only issue I see there is I'd have to go straight across that to get to my driveway. I'd have to cross all 4 similarly to what we do now, but we'll have to stop in that left turn lane from northbound 450 just to
From
get,
here?
yeah, cars will be stopped right there to take a left on New Road, and we'll have to go
Well,
straight across.
I mean, theoretically, you shouldn't be, you would be taking that today up here.
Yep.
And you would not be taking the U-turn because the median is there today. So this is something that theoretically we could probably improve access to you and add a left turn lane here. It would still be a significant improvement.
Yeah, that's all we're asking, just to consider that.
Okay, that's something we could certainly consider.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll bring that up when we discuss this with DOT.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you, that's all.
I don't have any more comments. Anyone with their hands raised, Madam Chair?
Okay, great. Giselle, did you want to ask something? It looked like you might have been muted, but talking. Okay. I think then if there are no other questions, I don't know if we need to open up for public support and opposition, Erin?
Sure, in case someone was holding back, waiting for questions to be finished. I don't see anyone raising their
I don't
hands.
see any hands raised. Okay, so could I have a motion then that we close the public hearing?
I just
Sorry.
remind one opportunity in case the applicant had any follow-up comments in closing prior to closing.
Thank you.
the hearing.
Thank you. I believe that we've responded to the questions and that the application in its full breadth complies with the regulation, and your adoption of the master plan moves us to the detailed site plan when we can get down to the nitty-gritty with the commission. So we urge your approval. Thank you.
Could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close.
Thank you. Giselle, I heard you first. Ron, you might be muted. In a second. John, you're still here, right?
John's muted also.
I think you're muted also. No
Second.
further. Second. Okay, great. And no further discussion, I think. All in favor to close the public hearing
Aye.
and move to deliberation. Any other questions or comments?
I
At
guess
this-
I got a little
Oh, go ahead.
confused. Are we talking, is this a residential building? I don't know why we were talking medical building. What?
This is phase one, the medical building. There will be a phase two that will be residential, but this is the medical building.
The applicant owns both parcels on both the north and south side of New Road, Giselle. And so the south side parcel on New Road is being proposed for a 3-story medical office building with the future phase of residential development on the north side of New Road. But that would be subject to its own PDD master plan, and that petition is not before you this evening. The applicant was simply letting you know that it's coming.
Understood.
Yeah, well, I think it's a perfect plan with a great team. So I say approve it and have them come back. This is a site plan.
I agree. I think it looks good.
Mm.
John, you're muted, I think, John. Okay, we got a thumbs up. Would someone like to move that we approve it then? And I don't know, Erin, would you like us to read?
I
the
did
resolution
prepare a
as-
draft resolution. If you need me to share that, I can pull that up unless someone has that readily available and would like to read it.
Or we could do both, I think, have it on the screen and then,
I'll grab it for you.
thank you. And could I have a volunteer to read? Or
I
should
could if you needed to. Is
Wanna
it
go
the, yeah, is it the one that the following draft resolution is offered? Is that your,
Yes, the Madison Planning and
Email.
Zoning Commission approve.
okay. I I move that the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission approve application 2219, New Road, map 60, lot 8, RU-2, owner applicant, 155 New Road, Madison, LLC, petition for zone boundary change, planned development district per section 32 to construct 29,980 plus square feet medical office building with associated site improvements based upon the following findings. The applicant has successfully demonstrated that the proposal is consistent with section 32.2.1 of zoning regulations as the location, uses, and layout of the proposed PDD are in conformance with the intent of and goals and objectives contained in the plan of conservation and development. The proposed PDD is in harmony with the surrounding neighborhoods and land uses, and its proximity to major roads, including I-95, will help provide convenient access to the site while minimizing impacts to local residential streets. The applicant has provided a conceptual plan to help alleviate safety and operational issues at the intersection of Route 450 at New Road / Duck Hole Road. The applicant has further agreed to pursue discussions with the town and Connecticut DOT regarding these proposed improvements. Furthermore, no natural or historic resources are present on the site that require protection. Number 2, the petition demonstrates consistency with section 32.3.2 of the zoning regulations as the subject parcel meets the characteristics required for eligibility for PDD designations such as minimum district size, parcel location, and minimum lot frontage. The commission has considered 32.3.3 of the zoning regulations in making this decision and determined that the proposed office building is an appropriate development for the currently vacant parcel located at an identified, quote, opportunity area, quote, in the plan of conservation and development. The project will further the goals of the 2013 POCD by providing appropriate economic development in town. Potential benefits include employment, goods and services, and tax revenue.
Thank you, Ron. Could I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Giselle. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you all.
Thank you guys so much.
Good luck.
Thank you,
Looking forward
everybody.
to seeing more
A lot of work
details.
ahead of us.
Thank you so much. Thank
Get
you.
back to work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, team.
All right, the next agenda item is our regular meeting, a pending application for 22-22, 281 to 283 Old Toll Road. Erin, did you have any comments before we open it to the applicant?
No, I did provide you with very basic, this is just a lot line modification in a previously approved subdivision. However, our current regulations require that the commission approve them as opposed to staff review. So it's really just an administrative review by the commission. Chuck Mandel from Tom Stevens and Associates is here. If you would like him to detail the changes, I think they're pretty evident in both
Plans.
The subdivision plan and the proposed. If the commission has any questions.
Does anyone need to see the plans again or have any questions on the commission? Chuck, thank you for hanging in with us.
I always love to hear Chuck talk, though.
I did send Erin an email late today. It's just a quick sketch. I took the tax map and I showed that we're just straightening out a previous line. We're making the lots equal. The applicant owns both lots and he just wanted to straighten everything out. So, and we do have health department approval.
Thank you for that quick summary.
Lot line than the original, actually.
Yeah.
So could I have a motion for approval? Ron, did you say something?
I so moved, yeah.
Thank you. And a second.
Second.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion? I'm going to go ahead and read that the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission approve application 22-22, 281 to 283 Old Toll Road, map 142, lot 7 and 8, RU1. Owner and applicant Robert Wilbur, application for a lot line revision as shown on map entitled Cranberry Hill Lots 6A and 6B, prepared for Robert Wilbur, 283 and 281 Old Toll Road, Madison, by Thomas A. Stevens and Associates, dated August 4th, 2022, revised to August 16th, 2022. Effective date of this approval shall be September 30th, 2022, and upon filing of signed Mylar on the land records. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Has Chuck ever lost one of these?
Hey, Ron, don't curse me on this one. we'll be back, believe me.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chuck.
Okay, good night.
Erin, I'm wondering if we could move on to the ACA appointment, who's been patiently waiting.
Sure, Alex is here. I can move him over if you'd like to meet Alex or ask him any questions. I did pass along his application that was made. ACA is a committee that is regulated within your zoning code. And I did send you the section. Basically, it's a 9-member committee appointed by the P&Z Commission. 9 members and 1 alternate. There's specific ratio of representation from various professional fields, civil engineer, artist, graphic designer, member of the chamber, historic preservationist, landscape architect, things of that nature. And then there's 1 opening for a member at large who does not necessarily require a specialty. And so that is as Mr. Province is not a landscaper or an architect and has another professional field, I believe he will be looking to take the member at large position.
And I see,
currently have 6 members on ACA. So there is room for new members, and it's been quite a while since we had one. So it's nice to receive an application.
Did you say you sent out his resume or anything?
his application.
What was that?
That's the general application, the same that you filled out, to serve on a board or commission.
It's on the agenda. It's a link on the agenda.
His application documents.
I was looking at the document she sent to us this evening, so I need to go into the agenda.
No, sorry, it was linked under the agenda item.
And Aaron, you answered all my questions about how many members and what qualifications there are. So Alex, can you join us?
Alex, I gave you permission to talk if you are available, or I'm not sure if you're just listening or unavailable to talk this evening. Are you there?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes,
yes,
we can.
All right, long night. I appreciate all you guys have endured this evening.
Thank you for hanging in with us.
My pleasure.
Did you want to speak out on behalf of yourself in any way, Alex, to press a little word of self-promotion? Or we have seen your application. I guess one question that I might have for you is what inspired you to apply?
Sure. So first and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I grew up in Madison. My parents, lived in Madison. So I've been here for 40 years, and I've kind of been on the sidelines and have followed along and feel like it's an obligation in a way to participate. It's one thing to have an opinion, but it's another thing to actually stand up and put the time in and actually contribute. And so that's what I feel like I'd like to do. Contribute, to have an opinion, and rather than complain about things, I'd like to participate.
Great, we made the same mistake. Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Province? In that case, I guess, how do we do this, Aaron? Do we just vote to approve his?
To appoint.
A motion to appoint Alex Province to ACA.
As the member at large.
As a member at large. Thank you. Could I have a
So
second?
moved.
Great. Second. Discussion. Alex, do you have any other questions or comments for us?
No, but thank you. I look forward to contributing and supporting Madison. Like I say, I grew up here and I love it, and it was so good to me, and I'd like to be good back. So
thank you for serving it. We still need to vote on it. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Congratulations. And thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. Aaron, the meeting minutes to be approved, since Secretary Elliot Hitchcock is not here, should we table them, or is it important that we go ahead and get them out there?
If you'd prefer to wait for Elliot, that's fine. I'm not sure if we have enough people to vote on them.
We don't.
Yeah, we may have to wait, I think, because I wasn't at the meetings. So yeah,
we'll table that to our October 6th meeting. And Aaron, I think you have some remarks.
Just quickly, yes. Just another reminder, John, you may not have been on the committee, or excuse me, on the commission when we first mentioned the Regional Planning Committee for SCROG, which is our Regional Council of Governments, South Central. that we participate with 19 other municipalities. And basically, there is a planning committee that is authorized through the statutes. I did give a link to the website so you can kind of look through and learn a little bit. They essentially act as they serve for referrals from other municipalities as needed. And they meet once a month. And typically their representation is a member of each municipality's local planning commission. We're a combined planning and zoning commission, and we have not had an active member since the end of the year, end of last year, excuse me. And so just planting another seed in everyone's head to think about it and see if you may have the time to dedicate to serve as the town's regional representative. Currently, they are meeting hybrid. Their in-person offices are located in North Haven, but they are, as I said, allowing access as well. So if anybody is interested or feels that they may have the time to dedicate to that, it would be great to get a representative back on the committee. If we don't have a commissioner, staff can serve in that capacity, but I would encourage, I know we're a little shorthanded ourselves in our commission, so it is understandable, but asking nonetheless. And if you feel interested, just go ahead and either email me or call me and let me know, and I can give you a little more information. And I think
You're
that's
not,
all.
Erin, I don't think you're allowed to do it. We don't want you having any more
meetings
jobs to do.
Thank you. And I think the only other item was that as we did have our land use attorney available this evening, and both Carol and I thought it would be a good idea, and our land use attorneys as well, to try and dedicate an evening that we could just focus on land use procedure and general laws, so that you know, we do have some new members, and we can always use a refresher as well, and it serves as a good forum for any questions that the commission may have. So we're looking to find a reasonable date in the near future to set that up. I'm assuming ideally, for your benefit, you would prefer that on a regularly scheduled evening as opposed to a special meeting night. But just wanted to clarify that and see if we're all on the same page.
I think it sounds good.
Regular meeting?
Regular meeting.
Regular, yeah.
But if it weren't a regular meeting, it'd still have to be noticed, right?
Oh, sure. It would just be a special
Okay.
meeting. Yep. Okay, so we'll keep you, we'll reach out to Ira or Pete and see what they're available. We'll schedule something soon.
Thank you, Erin.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Could I have a motion to adjourn then at 10:30 p.m.?
Could I ask the chairman a question?
Yes.
So apparently the deliberations and decision will be the next meeting. We also have
POCD.
So I think it would, and I won't be the one involved in making this decision, but I think it would not be appropriate to have people sit through an hour and a half while we're talking about the future planning and then go to the deliberation. So there's a way to get the deliberations over to the public off the Zoom. So then I would recommend that, but you all are going to decide it. But
Erin, your thoughts with John also in his use of time?
Yes, I have a preliminary meeting with John Guskowski ahead of our next meeting. I will update him and let him know how our hearings, you know, it's always sort of a working schedule here, not knowing what may be continued to another meeting. So I'll just let him know of our current situation and see if he's okay pushing his end back, or if he'd prefer to go forward at a certain time. I guess there's always an opportunity. I guess that depends on the commission's schedule as well. If you started a little earlier, yeah, I know we've had some late nights too. I guess maybe I can send an email out and kind of get some feedback from you if anybody is able to join the meeting earlier. I have a feeling that Elliot can't get on before 7 o'clock, but we can.
Well, remember, it's only deliberation. It's not like we're going to be hearing arguments and more questions. And it's up to us how long the meeting is, not
Yeah.
third parties.
I think we can.
But I also think that I frankly disagreed with our council tonight, just saying that I watched the videos is not good enough. You've got to say you've looked at the exhibits.
I think that map, in my opinion, has been handled by our land use council, and we're not currently discussing the application at this point in our meeting.
No, we aren't. Yeah, I'm just saying we're coming up to a hearing. We have two people who weren't there tonight, so who will be at the next meeting. So I just encourage someone to make sure they watch the videos and look at the exhibits and feel comfortable. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I mean, we do have a quorum, I think, so we'll just see how that shapes up for our next meeting. Thank you all. Could I have a motion to adjourn at 10:32?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Giselle. And a second.
Second.
John, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Long night. I appreciate it.